Good evening. I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next Board of Education special meeting is on Tuesday, February 4th at 7 p.m. in the board meeting room. Thank you all for being here this evening, and thank you certainly to the board. It's nice to see you back, Brenna. And hi, Brian, how are you? As part of my chair remarks, I wanted to give a little bit of context, historical context to where we are and where we're going. Our 10-year average for yearly budget increase, I'm going to focus on the budget first. For yearly budget increases is 2.722%. About 3 years ago, budget numbers started to trend higher in the mid threes and low fours. Our enrollment during that time has been largely flat. Recently, our priorities have included staff recruitment and retention. The previous 2 contracts have had relatively high contractual settlements, safety and security in the form of mental health and security personnel and services, and facilities. You'll not see numbers in the BOE budget, but we have, as we all know, $260 million in construction costs for Oxbridge and HHR. Our middle school will need renovation in the near term, so facilities remains a priority for us. And the Board of Education is around 75% of overall town spend. More if you count the debt on Oxbridge and HHR. So what we know going into this year is this is a community that continues to value high educational quality and a high level of service and support. We are experiencing historical cost increases, and this is not a one-year problem. It didn't start and end last year. It isn't going to start and end this year. Our projected costs for the next 3 years are 5.11, 4.46, and 4.35. Costs that have gone up are unlikely to come down over the next couple of years without external intervention, such as state aid or regulation. And some of our cost categories are likely to continue to increase. There's been limited room for investment for a number of years. We've had to focus on emergencies or investments that are relatively limited in scope. Board of Finance guidance is 3 to 4%. That guidance represents a tax rate target based on the variables the Board of Finance had in the fall. We're taking a moment to listen, to evaluate the impact of guidance on our budget, and then we'll make a recommendation back to the Board of Finance, who along with the RTM will approve how much money we're ultimately allocated. Darien is not unique this year. Budgets and communities around us are impacted by the same or similar cost increases. Like us, most other Durgays are reviewing budgets in the mid to high fours. At the CABE Board of Directors meeting last Wednesday and at the legislative breakfast this morning, there's a strong focus on letting Hartford know that we're all experiencing unsustainable cost increases. One of the things that we have to talk about, one of the areas, is cost increases in special education. We need Hartford to take a close look at this, and indeed there is a committee up and doing that. They need to fully fund ECR. As you all know, we are $287,000 in the hole this year, and we're looking at a budgetary adjustment for next year. They need to talk about incentives for investment. It's, as I just said earlier, it's really hard to invest because our budgets are so tight that it's difficult for us to set aside money, but it's critical that we continue to do that. Of course, whether I'm talking about both special ed and general education, but particularly in special education in this particular context. And they need to help us look at ways to control costs via regulation or other types of cost controls over state-approved private suppliers, because we don't have any control over the way that their cost increases are affecting our budget. Tonight, we have a few items of business, and then we'll take the next section of our budget discussion. This evening's discussion will include review of the existing suggested budget modifications. This conversation may look a little different than it has historically. First of all, we're focusing on higher level adjustments that would meaningfully impact the budget. Second of all, we are digging deeper, not to cut deeper, but so we can ensure that the dollars we allocate follow our priorities and are being spent as efficiently as possible. Tonight, we'll review the budget modifications we requested at our last meeting. Board members will also have a chance to propose additional budget items for discussion. February 4th is the public hearing. Following that, we'll have a chance to review, and we'll do some work to refine the budget modifications, hopefully into a fairly organized proposal or set of proposals. We'll vote on a final budget on February 11th. I will emphasize, the Board of Education remains committed to providing the best possible education for our students and shares the community's desire to prioritize student needs and programming. To ensure the long-term health of our district, we must carefully review all options and make informed choices. This process involves balancing competing priorities and making difficult decisions. Our work to provide a starting point that is relatively consistent with the Board of Finance tax strategy is still the beginning. We are now developing and adjusting a budget as part of an ongoing process with careful planning, flexibility, and a commitment to balancing priorities. Before we move to public comment, I'd like to make a clarification. We've received a number of emails about specific staff members. The Board of Education is responsible for determining full-time equivalent, or you may hear us call it FTE, positions within the district. This involves decisions about the overall number of positions needed to meet student enrollment and program needs. Personnel decisions, such as hiring, evaluating, disciplining individual employees, are the responsibility of the superintendent and the district's administrative team. In many cases, collective bargaining or other agreements affect what happens with staff when positions are restructured. We do not operate the district and do not control who sits in what seat. The board has quite a bit of work to do this evening. We greatly value public engagement and we want to hear from anybody who's here to speak. However, we ask that if you are, that you value our time in return. We have a lot to talk about. If you're here to speak this evening and somebody has already spoken to the point you want to make, please consider holding off to the end of the evening when there'll be another public comment section. Making sure you're making your remarks very brief or focusing on a new consideration. At some point, if it goes for too long, I may stop the first public comment period, take the rest of the meeting, and then allow the rest of the public comment to continue at the end of the meeting during the second public comment section. And with that, I thank you all, and we'll move on to you, Alan.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you to their members of the community and staff and students for being here this evening. We mentioned to our art department, thank you. If you haven't noticed, they have adorned our walls with new artwork from kids elementary.
Hold on, sorry. Public comments before superintendent's report.
Oh, yes, get my head of myself.
That's what happens when my agenda is underneath my other agenda. That's my fault. My apologies. Public comment.
Good evening. If anyone in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Once you've been recognized, please state your name and address for the record and note that you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. We will begin with in-person comment and then move to online.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there. Thank you for having me, for letting me speak. Dr. Adley and the board, my name is Sarah Hunsberger. I live at 51 Old Farm Road in Darien. I have a second grader and a kindergartner at Tokenique Elementary, 2 more in the pipeline, one of whom I need to get back to because she is 4 months old and will be needing to be fed soon. So I'm here and I find it, frankly, somewhat frustrating that I need to be here at all. I've spent most of the day today and in many days in the past few weeks discussing this year's budget with a group of extremely concerned moms and teachers. It's difficult to believe that instructional paraprofessionals are even under consideration to be cut from the budget. Like many teachers and parents I've spoken with, I believe that they are a must-have rather than a nice-to-have. Their primary role is to help educate our children. They play a vital role in helping our youngest learners with reading, writing, and math. Among other things, they have decades of experience and relationships with teachers and students alike. They are part of the fabric of our schools. And to suggest that they could be replaced by transient, untrained student volunteers is frankly naive. This attempt to deprive the children of paraprofessionals in order to trim the budget seems indicative of deeper issues with the district's annual budget that we need to get to the root of and address, rather than just making cuts to essential services year after year. We have to ask questions like, what is the solution to regular pupil transportation costs increasing hundreds of thousands of dollars year on year? And are staff retreats and professional development days strictly necessary? And do we really need to pave the Tokenique parking lot this year? We all understand the budget is tight and sometimes cuts need to be made. However, I urge you to make these cuts where necessary to the nice to haves rather than to members of our staff. Because in addition to having a negative impact on our children's experience, these measures will result in increased costs in the medium and long term. Without instructional paraprofessionals, the kids with the greatest need for additional support will suffer and fall further behind because, as special education professionals are stretched thin to support others, and high achieving students lose out on the opportunity to excel and move forward independently because teachers will redirect their focus to struggling students. Middle learners, who benefit most from extra para support, will be at risk of falling behind and requiring costly IEPs and 504s, increasing the special education budget significantly. I know you guys are pressed for time, so 2 quick anecdotes before I wrap this up. My second grade daughter.
I'm sorry, you're at time. You get 3 minutes. I'm sorry. Thank you for being here.
My name is Henry Havik and I live at 16 Hamilton Lane. I go to Oxford and I'm in 1st grade. I'm here to tell you how special our instructional aides are. Miss Anderson is a great teacher since she helps out when we bike to school. If you get rid of her position, I will be so sad and it won't be safe for us to bike to school. Miss Nino is always so nice. Every day she says hi to me and always smiles. She's a great teacher. If you get rid of her position, the school won't be the same. Miss Harris is a great teacher. I will be so sad if you get rid of her position. These 3 people make Oxford a special and wonderful school. These 3 people cannot be replaced and have dedicated their time to us. Show the kids of Oxford like me that you care about us and that you will keep these positions. Thank you.
And please forgive me. Unfortunately, I have to ask that we not clap, as lovely as that was. But if there was something else, I would have to also allow clapping, so you'll understand.
Hi, Kate Havik, 16 Hamilton Lane. Thank you all for your time. I know that you have donated a number of hours to all of us. You've asked for efficiencies, and I found them in the budget. Roughly $1.6 million can easily be found by looking at central related costs. There is a consultant worth $106,000, page 178 of the budget. Get rid of that or hire a student intern. Board of Education budget, request in-kind contributions. There is a $5,000 retirement celebration, page 206. That seems exorbitantly high when we're talking about getting rid of positions in the schools. $21,000 for board meetings, page 206. What is this? What are we spending this money on? $12,500 for BOE catering. Ask for in-kind contributions from local restaurants. I'd be happy to bake some cookies for you all. Replace the $92,000 executive assistant with an intern, page 208, line 11032. If student interns are that valuable, then I suggest Central utilize them instead. ELP, $10,000 a year for teaching supplies. Absorb this into the fee that parents are required to pay. Is this a for-pay program or is it subsidized fully by the district? I can't tell. It's straddling both. Let's make a decision. ELP dues and memberships fees, $10,000, page 256. What is this? Central office supplies of $30,000 a year, page 208, line 25001. What are we spending $30,000 a year centrally on for office supplies? I bet we can cut this down. Cut the director secretary position of $49,000, page 208, line 21501. Student intern might be a great solution since it seems to work for schools. It's really difficult to think about cutting positions that are central because they're family, they become family and they're like friends. That's how we feel about our teachers and the positions at our schools. What are weather services for $3,250? Google is a pretty effective weather app for me. Maybe we could try it. Pause on the Darien High School infrastructure charges of $687,000. Why do we need to repave the high school parking lot next year? We don't. Pause on the Tokenique bus pave, $285,000, page 318. Again, this can wait. Pause on district-wide purchases of $152,500, page 319. Pause on central office improvements, $143,500, page 319. This includes windows, it includes sidewalk repaving, and I would like to highlight, if we're going to focus on sidewalk infrastructure outside of Central, maybe we should prioritize the sidewalk at Ox Ridge and the fact that it's not ADA compliant. It seems like our priorities are not aligned properly, where we're focusing more on Central needs rather than our local school needs and what our students need. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott McCarthy, and tonight I speak as co-president of the Darien Administrators Association, or DAA, which represents the expert leaders in best education system in the state. As you learned from our detailed email communication dated January 27th, the leaders of this district share serious concerns about the proposed eliminations and cuts and are here tonight in support of the students of the Darien Public Schools, as we believe the current budgeting process and accompanying discussions prioritize a fiscal strategy that, to accomplish, cannot meet the evolving needs of our students and the educational system that supports them. We understand that the board represents a diverse set of constituents with competing interests. However, we do believe it to be true that every single one of those constituents' goal is to ensure the continued excellence of the Darien Public Schools. Thus, in representation of a leadership team with whom you charge to ensure the success of our students, we believe it is our duty to make known our concerns and advocate on behalf of students. Considering this board unanimously passed its 24-25 school year budget just 2 weeks before the end of last school year and recommended that we require every item in that budget, it is difficult to reconcile the current need to consider such drastic eliminations to so many departments, schools, and functions. And while we value and appreciate that the town and this board have supported and funded significant capital projects that will undoubtedly benefit our students, including the beautiful new Oxford facility, HHR renovation projects, and Great Island, I believe we would all agree that there is an important distinction between capital investments and human capital. Human capital is the foundation of education. As we outlined in our email communication, the town's wealth, in spite of these significant capital investments, continues to rise. And at the same time, the competition for the most talented educators is fierce. Just a week ago today, after releasing an enticing new teacher's contract, the New Canaan Board of Education reviewed their superintendent's proposed budget, unanimously voted to add 2 positions, and then passed their budget unanimously at a 4.67% increase. While our neighbors in New Canaan are back to the work of being educators, Darien educators are daily wondering if they'll be next to get a visit from Dr. Adley, letting them know that they are about to be publicly recommended for elimination. We ask that the Board of Education be resolute in their support of sustaining the essential human capital of the district. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Mazone, and I'm speaking tonight as the treasurer of the Darien Administrators Association, but more importantly, as someone who is a school building leader and who loves his job and who loves kids. I'm here to speak about the role of our department chairs who are up for consideration as a cost-saving option and the anticipated and unstudied impact cutting them would have on students and families. The department chairs are instructional leaders that oversee the Darien Public Schools curriculum and instructional methodology, which is the foundation of what students experience in their classrooms throughout their time in Darien. The department chairs assist students and families in conversations around appropriate course selections. They are the direct supervisors of 116 teachers in the district. They are the leaders in hiring and growing our new teachers, and they work diligently to align the curriculum in grades 6 through 12, just to name a few of their important responsibilities. The department chairs make up 1/4 of the administrators at Darien High School and Middlesex Middle School. If these roles are cut, all of their responsibilities will fall on the rest of us. Our concern is not hard work, as I hope we've demonstrated to you all over the years. Our concern is that the service DHS and Middlesex provide to students and families will be diminished. At the high school alone, we prepare for and chair almost 1,000 PPT and 504 meetings a year, support students and families in need, observe and implement board initiatives, support and observe teachers, organize clubs and activities and athletics, implement and lead initiatives to improve school climate, and maintain the safety of your children as our highest priority. And that's just scratching the surface of the many responsibilities that you all have entrusted to us. Our message is not that our current administrative structure is the only structure that can be successful in Darien. However, we do know that our current structure in Darien is working. We also know that the options in the board packet were put together a week ago without a plan in place to ensure that the services provided to families and students will not be negatively impacted. No one has studied what the impact may be on students in special education, relationships with families, mental health support, SAT scores, AP success rate, college acceptance, alignment and progress of our curriculum across grade levels. No matter what is decided here tonight and in the coming weeks, please know that we have the most hardworking team in the state, team meaning teachers, staff, custodians, monitors, secretaries, and administrators. And this team will continue to do our very best to meet the needs of Darien students and families. Also know that there's a high chance that we simply won't be able to provide the same quality of support, service, and time to students and families. And in Darien, it feels wrong to leave that up to chance. Please leave the current structure in place, as the implications of the suggested cuts have not been thoroughly and systematically studied. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight, and thank you for all you do for our district.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Doug Kreutz. I live at 767 Hollow Tree. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I'm here to say that we need to take all the energy that we've seen in this room for the past few weeks and bring it to the Board of Finance meetings, because that's where the decision is made on how much the Board of Ed is allowed to spend on our children's education. I think our Board of Ed has historically done a commendable job at ensuring our town's children get a high-quality education while maintaining a watchful eye on spending. Excluding insurance, transportation, and special education tuition, which I'll return to in a minute, our Board of Education has delivered an average annual increase in education costs of just 3.3%, spanning from 2008 through the proposed 2025 to 26 budget. In the present, costs are going up more than we would like. Inflation has hit everyone, and that includes our teachers. The current contract gives our teachers an average 4.6% annual wage increase for 3 years. It was right of this board to give our teachers a bigger than normal increase in the wake of 2 years of high inflation, and I'm glad they did. At the start, I called out 3 items: insurance, transportation, and out-of-district special education tuition. Combined, they account for 25% of our total budget, and that 25% is currently increasing at about 10% per year. For context, in 2008, those 3 items only accounted for 15% of our total budget. So this is a long-term problem, and one that is largely out of the Board of Ed's control, as Ms. McCammon alluded to earlier. So we have 25% of our budget going up at 10% a year, and the other 75%, which might normally go up at 3.3% per year, seeing some additional pressure from higher wages. The Board of Finance has been producing guidance for an annual education cost increase of just 3 to 4%. How does that make sense given these significant cost pressures that are outside of the Board of Ed's control? To be clear, this isn't just a Darien problem. New Canaan passed an 8% residential property tax increase last year, and Wilton passed an 11% increase. I'm sure those were not easy decisions. We're all taxpayers here. But their boards of finance stood with their boards of education to protect the quality of their town's schools. Our Board of Finance is unfortunately out of step with the times. If I were on the Board of Ed, I'd vote today to not only avoid any preemptive cuts, but also to add back the cuts the Board of Finance forced last year over the objections of the Board of Ed. The chairman of our Board of Finance likes to compare running Darien to running a business. I personally think that's a terrible analogy, but if I'm forced to use it, then I'm going to compare their approach to that used to manage what was once a great American company, Boeing. Boeing's management talked a big game about efficiency and disregarded the advice of people who had actual domain expertise, like our Board of Ed, while hiding behind their spreadsheets. That approach worked great, right up to the point where the plane started falling out of the sky. I hope to see a healthy turnout of concerned citizens at upcoming Board of Finance meetings so we can prevent our great school system from being turned into another Boeing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paula Blakely, and I am the 13-year principal of Holmes Elementary School. I stand here tonight with the leaders of our preschool and our elementary programs. In my 27 years as an administrator, I have never offered public comment. My colleagues here have not either. However, we collectively believe that this year's budget discussions are unique, and therefore we would like to respectfully share with the board and the community that we have significant concerns about the impact to our students of any cuts at all to our current level of staffing and programming from any union or any discipline. Just months ago, this board established that each line item in this year's budget was essential and voted to fund every current position and program. Since late May, enrollment has remained stable, academic expectations and student needs have only increased. Every person and position in every union continues to be critical to the success of our children and this district. While we are aware that the board is being confronted with increases in costs relating to insurance premiums and contractual obligations, and among other things, these rising expenses, while significant, were expected. Yet at the start of this process, Dr. Adley was directed to work within a budgetary cap that the board knew would not fund the known negotiated salaries and benefits of existing positions and our existing programming. Throughout this process, our community has been forced to have uncomfortable conversations about, among other things, cutting the gifted program, cutting instructional paraprofessionals, and now looking at cutting curriculum leaders. We have introduced increasing class size for our younger students, in some cases possibly adding 6 students to classes currently at 18. All of these options will detract from the quality of our students' current programming and experiences, and the long-term and far-reaching cost of such decisions will far outweigh any short-term savings. Families purchase homes in Darien because our schools are ranked among the best in the country. The town is not in any type of a financial crisis. Darien has the ability to comfortably fund a budget on par with what exists today. So ethically, we feel that we cannot stand by while the educational staffing and structures that are essential to the success of the children with whom we work are unnecessarily dismantled. Respectfully, you hired us for our expertise and to serve as leaders in this community. With children as our charge, we are collectively imploring you to maintain excellence for the students of Darien and to fully fund a budget that does not require any cuts to existing positions or programs. We realize that you have some tough conversations ahead. We are here to collaborate with you as you advocate for our most important asset, our children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kate Demoulas, and I am the proud principal of Middlesex Middle School and secretary of the Darien Administrators Association. I stand here tonight with my MMS administrative colleagues and my fellow DAA members out of a tremendous sense of responsibility and commitment to this community. As leaders with significant collective experience, we see harm to our students unfolding as a result of the requested proposals you will hear tonight. In a town which has proudly heralded that schools exist for children, this proposal risks dismantling the educational excellence our children experience at the secondary level. The collapse of the department chairs will undermine the advances that MMS has made and is striving to make. While it is true that a skilled educational leader can identify and support good teaching across disciplines, nothing replaces the subject-specific expertise of an educational leader who has mastered the content, taught successfully in the field, and committed to ongoing learning in its pedagogy and best practices. My department chair colleagues may not be student-facing in the same way as a teacher or a paraeducator, but their daily work directly impacts dozens of teachers and hundreds of students. They are frequently in classrooms, coaching teachers, providing support to PLCs, planning discipline-specific professional learning, guiding the development of curriculum, instruction, and enrichment. They provide personalized guidance to parents on placement and collaborate with students' team members to meet various student needs. I fear that the further reduction of expertise in the Darien administration will erode the excellence in instruction, responsiveness, and performance that this community expects and that our children deserve. The board passed the current budget after months of protracted and turbulent consideration. Just 8 months ago, you unanimously voted that every current FTE and every current position was essential to the functioning of the district. Each of these positions is as important to educational excellence today as it was then. We stand united as your partners in this work to urge you to balance fiscal responsibility with our shared commitment to our students. We urge you to fund a budget that lives up to the district's mission and vision, to the strategic plan, to your board goals. Fund the whole budget. If not, I fear, and we fear, that these cuts will have significant, predictable, and unforeseen consequences on the children of the Darien Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ellen Dunn, principal at Darien High School. I offer you my thoughts this evening as I complete my 39th year as an educator, 37 of which have been spent at Darien High School, 19 wonderful years as a teacher of biology and science department coordinator, 6 years as assistant principal, and now 12 years as principal. I am grateful for the support and generosity of our families and our community, and the commitment to excellence I have shared with all of you and each Board of Education, each superintendent, and each cabinet along my journey. This work, alongside an extraordinary faculty and staff, has resulted in a school I have been proud to call my own since I passed through its doors for the first time in 1988. I speak tonight with a profound sense of responsibility to protect an exceptional school that has been intentionally designed, shaped, and nurtured over time by the countless contributions of generations of educators into what it is today. What makes a great high school? Of course, the remarkable students we have the privilege to serve are the very foundation upon which we build. The scaffolding that supports the work is not composed of sheetrock or concrete. It is instead the rich human resource we have amassed, a team of people who share a common purpose and an understanding of what is most important. At Darien High School, we put our students first. This is not a vision placed on placards, but it is the thread that connects us all. We are bonded together in this spirit, and we hold the highest expectations of our students and one another. The most important thing we do as school leaders is build this team, choosing people of character who care deeply about young people and share our dedication to them, whose intellectual acumen challenges our students, and who possess a passion and curiosity for their discipline. This is what makes the staff we have assembled so exceptional. Debate about the value of the contributions of those who make up the very fabric of Darien High School harms the entire staff. New leaders, new teachers, new staff, all hired through an extensive vetting process, are now wondering if they have a place in a school they have already begun to love. Discussions have persisted about the impact of discipline-specific leadership. A high school of our caliber, in my opinion, cannot continue to be exceptional without leadership that honors and understands that which is unique about content-specific pedagogy, its curriculum, and its distinct instructional design.
Thank you, Ellen.
Our students give us the very best, and we should give them the same. We ask you to consider these proposed cuts for the impact they will have on the core of what we do. We recognize and share your commitment to the work of our schools and your dedication to the students we share.
Ellen, I have to
Thank
cut you
you.
off. Thank you.
My name is Jordan Casetta. I live in Newtown. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak today. I am here in support of the remaining 15 Darien Elementary School instructional para-educators keeping their jobs. I've known several of the current instructional paras for many years, one of whom is my mother. I graduated from Darien High School in 2014, The last time I stood up here at a board meeting was my senior year of high school. I had the honor of receiving the Superintendent Citizenship Award in 5th, 8th, and 12th grade. The instructional paras were a huge part of my elementary school experience at Oxridge and Tokenique. The instructional para position is a vital role in the daily functioning of the schools. Alongside the teachers, the paras are at the foundation of helping the students emotionally, intellectually, and socially. They help to ensure the safety and well-being of the students for the entirety of their elementary school experience. After listening to the response of the paras, teachers, and parents, I'd like to respectfully say that I notice a large discrepancy between the description of the para job versus all the intricacies and nuances the para job truly entails. The value, dedication, experience, and skill set of the paras far outweighs the money saved. If the para job is cut, this will cause a cascade of problems that haven't fully been taken into account. It's going to leave teachers without their long-standing trusted support system. I consistently relied on the support of the instructional paras during my elementary school years. From a student perspective, I can say this is not what's best for the students or for the well-being of the school. How can temporary interns take the place of paras who spend years building rapport and deeply understand the inner workings of the school? This cut goes against what the majority of teachers, students, and parents want. It seems the proposed budget isn't representing or respecting the voice of the community. I think this is a confusing and discouraging move for the morale of Darien Public Schools. It sends a terrible message that people are disposable and not appreciated. College students will be given a brief stepping stone, but at the expense of the livelihood and careers of people who have been loyal to this school district for decades. This cut proposal is beyond disheartening. The schools are already stretched thin from the 10 instructional para cuts from last year. I'm respectfully urging the superintendent and board to once and for all ensure the security of the instructional para jobs in the years moving forward. This will give the instructional para educators the respect they deserve. To the paras, I just want to say, thank you for all that you do. You do an incredible job. The majority see you and support you and want you here. I hope you feel the love, care, and support of the community behind you and how much you are appreciated by so many. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Courtney P, 5 Lillian Terrace. I'm a former special ed para from the district and now have children, one at Middlesex Middle and one at DHS. While these proposed budget cuts may not directly impact my own children at the elementary level, I feel compelled to speak tonight as a former Darien school employee, a mother, and a responsible member of this community. I believe it is my purpose to help this board see what is clearly needed at the student level. I stand before you tonight because I believe we've lost sight of what truly matters, the success of our students. While I recognize the need to be fiscally responsible, we must ask ourselves a question. What do we want our schools to look like in a year, in 5 years, 10? Let's envision an effective classroom, one where every student thrives academically, socially, emotionally. Then let's evaluate where we stand today. What are we doing well? And where must we grow to achieve this vision? It's time to shift our perspective. Right now, decisions are being made from the administrative vantage point, but we need to view our schools through the eyes of our students. We must refocus on what truly matters, working from the ground up, not the top down. We should ask, what are our students experiencing in 2025? Every child in this district, from pre-K to 12th grade, has faced some level of stress and trauma due to the pandemic. The world isn't the same as it was in 2019. Our parents, teachers, support staff, administrators, community, and most of all, our students are not the same. Anyone working directly with students will tell you our students need more, not less. Post-pandemic, we're seeing increased emotional and social issues, academic gaps, and a rise in IEPs and 504s. Teachers and staff are stretched thin, running on fumes as they try to meet the growing needs of their students. We must act now. Don't cut paraprofessionals, add more. Don't increase class size, reduce them. Don't collapse department chairs, honor them. Don't eliminate professional learning, make it relevant and empowering. Don't run our teachers into the ground. Support them so they can continue to support our kids.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jenny Chapman, 23 Goodwise River Road, and I want to thank everyone on the Board of Ed for your service, all the volunteer hours, and to Superintendent Dr. Adley for the work he puts in here, and for everyone who has spoken this evening. The proposed budget increase of 4.4%, at first glance might seem reasonable, but as we've all said, it just is not taking into account the cost pressures of the reality we are all living in. We've already talked about insurance costs. We're talking about 24% increase since 2022-23. Yet we're going to increase by 4.4% the budget. That's the guidance that you're being given, that you're being asked to spend valuable time working towards. How does that make sense? How is this a good use of your time and of this community's time? Budget pressures are being driven mainly by inflation costs and cost increases from third-party providers. I implore you to please go back around this guidance, because our teachers are not labor costs. They are valuable resources to this community. And those valuable resources have been impacted by inflation, because teachers pay for shelter, for energy, for food, and all of those prices have gone up. So when we say that our budget isn't been impacted by inflation, what are we saying? The current proposal to compensate for that is to cut good programs and resources that inspire our kids intellectually, physically, and artistically, rather than adequately funding the school's budget. We are booming. We are booming with new construction, with economic activity, with high employment. So this discussion all comes from guidance that was given. So the core of this discussion needs to go back to the guidance that was given, so that we can start focusing back on the children, on the programs that they want, versus months and months of energy around a budget that we just heard several times that was just agreed upon in May. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Okay, is anyone online, Cass?
I have one raised hand.
Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Nicholas Scala, you've been recognized and unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record and note that you'll have up to 3 minutes to comment.
Nick Scala, 168 West Avenue. Good evening. I'd like to speak first to the proposed cutting of instructional aides. For those that are less familiar, it cannot be overstated. These are incredibly experienced, highly skilled, and talented individuals who are remarkably dedicated, certainly far beyond the requirements of the job or anything commensurate with their compensation. In contrast, the proposal to terminate them for efficiency sends the message that they are nothing more than a fungible commodity. And the job insecurity they are forced to endure one budget cycle after another is entirely unreasonable. This also brings to mind a distinction, excuse me, that I think is important not to lose sight of between value and cost. While we all understand that your job necessitates getting into the weeds of the minutia of line item by line item cost, we cannot achieve better efficiency by sacrificing those who surely provide some of the greatest value relative to the cost of retaining them. The instructional aides are force multipliers who fill in every gap and add greatly disproportionate value to every element of school functioning. Furthermore, there could be a cascading effect of damage wrought as instructional aids provide so much value for all students, but especially those who need more support. Even the most antiseptic financial calculus would suggest that this cut is myopic and will surely prove to be penny-wise but pound-foolish. And ultimately, this may prove even more costly by making the process of bringing on highly qualified new staff in the future that much more difficult. The proposed replacement by inherently inexperienced interns at best is inadequate and is concerning with regards to safety as well as all the functionings of the school day. With regard to safety, the role of the school safety officer is indispensable and ours is excellent and much appreciated. But those with some familiarity know that most of the time, more security happens when those veteran staff members who know every child and so many parents and others are there to greet everyone who approaches that school. I realize also while discussing this that while most of us have become inured to the way that the use of so-called interns has evolved in many industries, an unpaid intern by definition is prohibited from doing the work of a paid employee. This presents something of a catch-22. Either the Darien public school system is engaging in ethically, if not legally dubious labor practices, or it's honoring the spirit of an internship, which means that this would represent a net cost to the district in the time required for experienced staff members to mentor these interns. It's simply one or the other. Tough choices will indeed have to be made, but they should be considered. For all the talk of community and such, this cut amounts to sending family members to the chopping block so that we don't have to have slightly less nice things. I would strongly urge the board to consider such things as delaying repaving of a functional high school parking lot before jettisoning staff who cannot simply be replaced with equals at a whim. With regard to the IDEA program, I couldn't agree more with all of the very eloquent testimonials of current and former IDEA students, but I will thank them for broadening my perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Scala. You're at time.
We have
Okay.
one more hand to go up. Do you want to do it now or at the end?
There's more in person.
Oh, sorry.
I think. Okay, one more, and then we're gonna move on. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Meredith Kekus. I live at 15 Bittersweet Lane. I have a daughter, Isla, who's in first grade at Holmes. I also have a son, Theo, who is 3, who I hope follows her at Holmes when he's old enough. And I just want to echo the sentiments of many of the other parents that are here tonight, because I believe that these cuts will have an immediate and a lasting impact on the quality of my children's education. For one, my daughter is currently in a class of 18 students. With these cuts, her class will jump to 24 students next year. That is a 33% increase in class size. That will make her class the largest elementary class within the district. And this is well above class average size. But beyond just making the classes bigger, there will be far less experienced in-classroom support. The idea that an intern is a suitable replacement for someone who is well-trained, for someone who's experienced. Anyone who's ever had interns knows that they need a lot of on-the-job training. This is basically giving teachers bigger classes and then asking them to manage essentially another student. But I also think that if you talk to the teachers about how invaluable and indispensable these paras are, you will hear that they say things like these individuals are not people that can be cut. They absolutely are my right arm. They are how I get my job done. And I think that we really need to listen to our teachers and what they're saying. But, I think that the crux of my complaint is really twofold. So one, these continued budget cuts just means that we're going to start losing teacher talent. I mean, if you talk to the teachers, the administrators, they are frustrated, they are exhausted. And this is a slippery slope because once people feel undervalued and overworked, they start to take their talent somewhere else. We can get out ahead of this, and we absolutely should. And also, this is a town that does not need to make these cuts. In December of 2024, the Board of Finance presented a $2.6 million contribution because of decreased costs and increased revenue. We also decreased our mill rate in 2024 or from 2024 to 2025. I would be happy to pay a higher mill rate if that kept the quality of our education intact. So if you guys are being hamstrung by the constraints that the Board of Finance is placing on you, I encourage you to please respond to me and to other parents and let us know what you are going to do about it, to go to bat for our students, because budgets are really about priorities, and I think that there is no greater priority than our children's education.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Alan, thank you all for your comments.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And as I started to say, thank you to the art department. If you look around you in the boardroom this evening, there's artwork from all across the district, from elementary school through AP art. And actually, right above Mark Mazzone's head there, I think that is the Giant's Causeway on the Irish coast, the Antrim coast of Ireland. But I can't remember which student did it, but I'm sure I'll get a wee chance to meet with her. Elementary conferences, I know we're looking ahead a wee bit here, are March 19th, 20th, and 21st. There's a wee bit on the calendar. It does say the 19th, 20th, and 21st. It just says that the 19th is the evening. It's the 20th is the evening. Well, I'll send out notification for that. Thank you to Madam Chair and Ms. Nelson for attending the area breakfast this morning, the legislative breakfast. She's already commented on that. I, along with 17 of my Fairfield county superintendents, submitted a letter to the House Education Chair regarding excess costs and paid sick leave. I will forward a copy of that to the Board of Education. The Darien Thriving Youth is being administered this week at the high school and the middle school next week. Congratulations to our middle school quiz bowl who competed in New Jersey this last weekend. 5 of the teams qualified for playoffs. Legally Blonde is happening at the middle school. I think our 5th graders are traveling over there tomorrow. There was a dress rehearsal today. Congratulations to the crew of Legally Blonde. I look forward to catching the show. Some of our elementary schools will be doing a Super Bowl fund driver, right? Thank you for doing that, for raising funds and opportunities for those less fortunate. I want to thank Congressman Himes, who will be attending Royals Valentine's for Vets next week. And if you haven't attended this with your children or otherwise, I would encourage you to step up to the high school for the National Technical Honor Society Curiosity and Experimentation Night. That is February 3rd. That's organized by our science department. And we are considering not having a curriculum committee meeting. We'll defer the February 1 to March.
Thank you. Student representative reports, Brenna and Ryan.
Good evening. We're encroaching a drier yet calmer season at Darien High School with the conclusion of midterm exams and the official end to the first semester. It's a bit of a calmer period for the performing arts and the fine arts, but tickets will go on sale shortly for Theater 308's production of Les Mis, so keep your eyes peeled. A steady, ever-present reminder that we're strongest when united.
Yeah, just adding on to Brenna, keeping it brief, not much happening. Tonight, our girls and boys basketball and hockey team both played, so hoping the best for them. And along with that, our boys squash team is playing just now, so also hoping for a big win for them. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes of the special meeting held on January 14th, 2025, minutes of the regular meeting held on January 14th, 2025, minutes of the special meeting held on January 21st, 2025. That's Joanna, seconded by Dennis. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Board committee reports.
Just as Alan mentioned, there will be no curriculum meeting this month. It's because they were unable to do the HMH day on the 17th. So we're going to push that. So more information.
Thank you. John, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to figure out the date. About 10 days ago, we had a finance committee meeting ahead of the holiday weekend. We just discussed some transfers, and we also discussed the deficit that was created by the ECR cuts. Rich is going to have more on that. On a lighter note, we did have a nice presentation from the Blue Wave Booster Club describing the new sponsorship program and the model that's working greatly, and we thank them for coming in and sharing that.
That's great. Anyone else? Dave?
So the Darien Board of Education
Policy Subcommittee met on January the 21st, 2025. We discussed 4 policies, which we'll be hearing more about from Marge later tonight.
Great, thank you. Okay. Discussion and possible acceptance of the contemplated gift for the athletic department. Chris Manfredonia.
Good evening, everybody. You have there, speaking to Booster Club, a contemplated gift from the BOE Booster Club to Durham Public Schools in.
Whoop, we lost you, Chris. Just a minute, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Booster Club would like to donate a light kit that we placed in the ground underneath the stadium flagpole that would be able to illuminate the American flag at night during inclement weather for a home contest in the Darien High School Stadium. The gift would be purchased by the Booster Club, but would be installed by our maintenance crew.
Be installed when?
It would be installed by our crew, our maintenance guys.
Our crew.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions about this gift?
I have a question, Jill.
Yes,
I
yeah.
don't have a question necessarily about the gift itself, but I'm just curious how the gifts are chosen. Is this the Booster Club decides that they think these things are a great thing for the school, or is this something that the school asks for?
The school typically asks for, coaches will ask for nice to have for the program. The school asks for nice to have for the facilities of the district. Typically, they're requests made to the Booster Club.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, may I have a motion to approve to accept the contemplated gift for the athletic department? That's Dave, seconded by Dennis. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much to the Booster Club on behalf of the Board of Education.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, Rich, discussion on November, December 2024 financial report and possible action on proposed budget transfers. See November, December.
You have it, or?
What's that?
Yep, can you go to the next
Oh,
one?
through December. Sorry, the end one. Yeah.
This is the financial report through December. Through December, we are forecasting a deficit of 192,122. The general education RCs are forecasted at a positive balance of 39,735, while the special education RCs are forecasted at a deficit of 297,938. Moving forward to salaries, salaries are forecasted at a small balance, positive balance of $66,357. We do have a small amount of savings in salary savings, building substitutes, and clubs and councils that are not running. Moving to operating, we are forecasted at a positive balance of $38,082. We do have a slight deficit in special education contracted services of $46,000, which we do have a recommended transfer for. And then out of district tuition is a positive balance of $84,082. Moving to fixed, fixed is a slight positive balance of $1,300, and that is payroll tax savings due to some salary savings. Revenue is forecasted at a deficit of $297,398. This is primarily due to excess cost reimbursement. We did budget a 70% reimbursement from the state. The state's reimbursement is just under 60%, which is the lowest on record. And so that is causing a deficit of $287,000. There are 2 transfers recommended for approval to the board. The first is for $46,000 into contracted services, and this is for a contracted RBT. We are recommending taking salary savings from some vacant teacher aide positions, and then $10,632 for ELP tuition. We did have a couple of students classified with an IEP, and so they are no longer paying students, and so we are recommending taking savings from building substitutes as well as a vacant paraprofessional position.
Any questions about the report or those transfers? No? Okay. And John, the committee is recommending to us adoption of the transfers, correct?
Correct.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the November, December budget transfers? That's John, seconded by Greg. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you all. Thank you, Rich, for the work. Okay. First reading on proposed revisions to Board of Education policies 5075, recess and play-based learning, policy 5610, gifts, policy 6710, field trips, policy 1330, community partnership.
So policy 5075, we're asking you to repeal the current policy and replace it with the new policy, which, as it says in the memorandum, accurately reflects what the elementary schools are doing as far as exclusion from recess. Mrs. Walsh had a question at the policy committee meeting. So You may not exclude a child from recess unless they are a danger to themselves or others. However, if a school has 2 recesses, the shorter recess, you may exclude that child once in a school week. So that was a clarification there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that policy? No, okay.
So in the gift policy, policy 5610, the policy committee is recommending that we include guidelines for classroom gifts. This is based on the CDSP current practice of $15 a family for a holiday gift and $25 per family for an end of school year gift.
Okay, any questions on that policy? Yes, John?
Sorry,
Maybe someone else?
I didn't, does the size of the gift come up in this policy too? Like the limit and the approval process?
So we had recommended a cap, but then it became a little more complicated because of different class sizes. So if you notice, we did specifically exclude athletic teams because those gifts are covered in the student activity manual.
Okay, thank you.
Katie has a question. Katie?
Thank you. I was curious if anyone knew when the last time the guidance that CDSP has been using was updated, just how recent it had been adjusted.
Last year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the language under group gifts, I understand, but we have some students who have multiple relationships that might be outside of the classroom. How does this policy contemplate a student who might, who might be a diabetic and have a relationship with a nurse, or who might need a lot of different other kinds of services?
So it encourages a nominal gift or something heartfelt, like a Valentine or a letter to the file, but it doesn't
Right.
put a limit.
Okay. Okay. Shirley, sorry, before we move on, just a question. I'm not sure that it's policy, but we have a lot of teachers who have large classes, but then we have other folks who just support individual students. What is, I think group gifts helps teachers who are in large classes, but not necessarily those who support individuals. And I'm looking at you because you manage a large cohort of people who follow under that. What's your general feeling about gifts to that group of teachers? If I've asked that clearly.
I haven't thought about the question before. I don't think I would distinguish between gifts of who the receiver is. I think the value of it is that it's a way of someone saying thank you and someone supporting teachers and students.
Okay, so the guidance is not elaborate, unduly expensive, or cash. Okay. All right, Greg.
Was there previously a different amount cap on these?
There was no guidance.
There was no guidance.
Before, and so families, I think, were somewhat about what would be most appropriate for staff.
So we're creating guidance effectively. We're
Yes.
creating a cap. Do we feel like there's a need for that?
I don't. Who, do you guys want to speak to that?
Well, I think that many districts, and we had submitted to the policy committee some sample policies from other districts, just gives some kind of guidance. It relieves a little bit of pressure on families. It gives the CDSP some guidance, and that's why we included it.
So are these gifts going to be are they going to come before the Board of Ed, or it's just
No.
guidance?
These are the ones where the room mom will often email the families and say,
Yeah.
would you contribute $40? It'll be split between a year end and a mid-year gift. And now, but there were years where I think sometimes people were saying, how about 60 or how about 75? And so I think that's some of the spirit of it. Enough of others have had different experience, but Joanna, maybe you want to comment.
My understanding is that quite a long time ago, Board of Education asked CDSP to put some guidelines in place to make sure that the teachers in all 5 elementary schools were sort of recognized equitably. So one school didn't get tennis bracelets and the other school just get tennis balls for their teachers. And so over the years, it sort of evolved into this. In elementary school, parents want to gift their teachers, but they often don't know what's appropriate. So one, if there's a class gift and there's a limit on it agreed to by all the PTOs, then teachers are gifted equitably across the schools. Separately, if a person is new to town and wants to give their teacher a holiday or year-end gift, and they're wondering, should it be $10 or $200? If they stumble upon this policy, they'll have a better idea of what's considered appropriate, by the board at least, but nothing's an obligation. Everything is a volunteer.
It's consistent with like what the other districts are doing.
Yeah, they look at some other districts, yeah.
I think we talked a little bit at our policy committee meeting about kind of leveling the playing field too, so that I hope that no family would try to, I'm going to buy you a really expensive bag so that you treat my kid better, but there's just a way of leveling that out.
Yeah, I'm trying to balance that with like the teachers value this, I assume, to some extent. And are we disadvantaging ourselves in any way by making it the same as other?
You don't go into teaching for the gifts.
Well, but there's.
You only take this back down, we can talk a little more.
No, thank you, Dave, for the offer, though. That's so kind of you. So let's, this is a first read. No, I know. Thank you, though. Field
Katie's
trips.
got her hand.
Oh, Katie, yes.
Thank you. Just as we're discussing this, I do just want to just mention a couple of things for us to think about. My experience has always been that the guidelines has worked very well as they come by the PTOs and through CDSP helping to coordinate that as they do so many things, which I think is really great. One of the things that's nice about leaving it in that camp is that the PTOs really have the flexibility to adjust year after year and know what's going on within buildings and to communicate to each other. Rolling this up to a board level does seem a little odd to me in that, our policies are really written to be kind of broad and, some of them are very strict and have enforceability components, whereas this guidance has never been enforced. There's really no way for it, whether it comes from the PTOs or the board. So that seems a little off to me. I do just think it's worth thinking about what we might be requiring of ourselves if we were to write this into a policy in terms of making sure that we are appropriately updating it, especially as we, continue to be in inflationary environments. So I would just leave that for long-term consideration.
Dave?
Happy to take it back if you further discussion. I inherited this one. I don't have a strong, I'm all for full disclosure. I said should be unlimited, just disclosed. So I kind of agree with that perspective, but I don't like having prescriptive limits picked arbitrarily, but people have different takes and Shirley hadn't considered it. Maybe there are some thoughts to your point that you'd ask for larger classes or small. So happy to spend a little more time.
All right. You want to send it back?
Great.
All right, you got it back. Thank you.
Policy 6710 field trips. At the suggestion of board members, we are trying to streamline board meetings so that overnight trips will come to the Board of Education the first year in which they run. And after that, if they run again or a very similar trip runs, Dr. Adley will notify the board by the end of December which of those will run again.
Okay. Any questions about that, Robin?
I have a few questions. This is maybe more for the international trips, just to the extent that even if a trip has run year after year, to the extent that there are potentially security issues or things changing within a certain country, the way this would work is that the superintendent who would evaluate if that was a risk that we did not want to take and then cancel a trip. And then secondarily, if the Board of Ed does not specifically approve it each year, do we have a legal liability if something happens when students are abroad on a trip?
So the superintendent approves all field trips, whether they come to you or not. So if there was a security concern, it would never get to you. And the Board of Education would, I don't think there's any individual liability.
It's just a question.
Yes.
I know we used to have China exchange programs. Those went away. They haven't come back. And even if they were initially in place, and then if they recur year after year, if we adopt a process like this, I guess my question is, when would it come back to the Board of Ed if the Board of Ed members had considerations that they might want to discuss about the risks? So that's just a question.
Dave?
So I guess for point of information, is you're talking about the December timeline, Marge? We'd get that in our board packet. We'd see it. It would be an item on the agenda. We'd have opportunity to raise it at that time, correct?
We could make it an item on the agenda. I don't think we contemplated that.
No, we were going to
Policy.
just in the spirit of the suggestion of the policy, we would apprise the board in like the end of October or November, whenever all these come through, no later than December, obviously. But if you want to do it a different way, that's fine. You know, if you want to include it on the.
So we
agenda.
put the December deadline in because the policy still says October 15th.
Right.
So we could even move it up and.
So then I guess the question would be, would we like to amend well, we have a second reading. So I guess the question is, if people would like to see this further, or we could take it back down for discussion, or if somebody would like to propose changing the mechanism slightly. We would have time to take written comments, Jill, between the second read.
Yes, we can take written comments if people have them.
Or maybe just for the international trip specifically, potentially. And the other question I had was on the financial side, because the policy does reference parent fundraising as well as Darien public school costs that might be incurred in these trips. And so the question I have is, if those costs are above a certain dollar amount, either to the district or the families, is there a point or a dollar amount that the Board of Ed should be approving, especially to the extent that we're thinking about budgetary issues and also potentially participation fees? And it's important to understand what the families actually are currently paying for, whether that's clubs or other trips or expenses and fundraising they're being asked to do. So those are just another kind of set of issues that I know we used to have. We were privy to that information. So this would go away, I'm assuming.
It's interesting. I mean, we could take comments on that, Jill. We could talk it out here on the full board. We could take it back down for further discussion. My immediate reaction is we had arbitrary criteria on length of stay and mileage. This is just another arbitrary based on dollar. So if we're reporting it, I'm not sure what utilities gain by it. I don't know, but I'm open to picking this up in the next conversation.
Go ahead, Greg.
That maybe on this, and even maybe on the prior one, rather than like putting like limits on things and doing it by miles, you just say like, if it's above a certain dollar threshold, then it needs to be approved or disclosed or something like that.
Why did we use the mileage threshold? What's the?
That was just in the previous policy. Those were the field trips that came to you for approval.
So that's.
Yeah, I guess my reluctance is picking another arbitrary number and then in 5 years and just,
Right. I mean, honestly, okay, go ahead, Joanne.
I was just going to say, it was my understanding that we were doing this to sort of be more efficient with the board's time. And almost, I think, to a T right now, every trip is done through EF, worldwide traveling. And that was the reason why we felt that, because they were all done through the same company. We didn't need to have every single detail gone over every single time. And it was all essentially the same framework, just a different country.
Yeah.
So I feel like the policy here sort of takes that into account. And then if this is something that's entirely new or the first time in many years that we do something not through this company, I feel like Dr. Ali said he would already be bringing it back to the board because it wouldn't be new. It would be new. And if it's new company, the first we'd see it anyway.
Yeah. I agree. I think I agree with that. I think
that would satisfy, I think, what I'm speaking about. And I think generally we don't incur costs as a district. Usually these are families paying for a voluntary trip, and at least in the circumstances we're talking about.
So I guess we have it for the second read. If anyone wants comments for policy, happy to circulate her to Jill, and then we can look at that. And if there are other considerations, fine. Other than that, we'll see how this goes in practice, and we can always revisit it.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, policy 1330 is a new policy. This was based on principles developed by the Communications Committee. And the board then tasked the policy committee with developing a policy which Shipman and Goodwin drafted. This is not a model policy. It's based only on the principles that they were given.
Do you want to walk through the highlights, please?
I mean, it reaffirms that the superintendent is a spokesperson for the district and not the board chair is the spokesperson for the board, that the board will solicit public input and that people will try to respond as quickly as possible to communications and requests, questions. It really, as opposed to a policy which prescribes things, it's more of an aspirational policy, I think, gives.
Any absence of a direct response to community input or feedback should not be interpreted as the board's or administration's failure to receive or appreciate such contributions. Yes. Yes, because for the record, I'm behind on emails these days. Okay, any questions? Okay, I think this is somewhat new and it's an interpretation of communication. So I think this is worth thinking about. And if you've got comments, send them in before the next meeting, because there might be things to think about that occur to you after this. Okay. Personnel report, Marge.
Just a couple of resignations.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up discussion and questions on fiscal year 26 proposed budget and discussion of budget modifications under consideration. Sorry. So as a reminder tonight, what we'll do is go through the modifications that have been proposed and talk about anything that's missed or not missed, but anything we might want to add to the discussion. We are trying to focus on keeping things at a higher level. So again, it might look a little different than what we've done in previous years. We certainly can talk about RCs specifically. But I did have talked to all of you and I wanted to put out, you know, that we've collectively been talking about some thoughts on an initial framework for some decision making. We aren't making any decisions tonight, but we are starting we'll be refining our thinking. I think that, you know, one of the things we've talked about is, I've lost my notes, I'm sorry. Looking for adjustments that limit direct impact to the classroom, prioritizing true efficiencies first, spreading the impact of any efficiencies or fees thinly and broadly, and considering the implications of any efficiencies on a multi-year basis, i.e. not deferring problems, limiting or not deferring problems to next year, not to create an uptick in expenses in subsequent years with unwise costs that need to be quickly restored or that create savings today but increase the budget tomorrow, and understanding that the time horizon for realizing some savings may be longer term. I appreciate that the community feels that this, and we and our staff understand that this is a very person-heavy business that we're in. Everything we're talking about is staff and students and families. But this portion of the discussion is more technical. So, it is more fiscal. So with that, I will turn it over to you guys to lead us through kind of where we are. Are there some answers to questions that you provided?
Madam Chair, would you like me to go through, first of all, the reductions and then follow up with the questions? Or would you want to go through the questions first and follow up?
In terms of new questions?
Well, yes, so there were new questions. For anybody in the audience, the questions have been uploaded. Any additional questions that are received from individual board members, they are highlighted. And I think it's mauve. But I'm happy to discuss the budget reduction request first. Also in the board packet, you will see that there's an Excel spreadsheet, that the board has the live version of that. And that has been populated with some of the proposals that can be taken off, removed. Typically, that's what would be happening this evening. We'll be adding some concepts, or retracting concept. Well, actually, the decision making would be the following time we meet at the next board meeting. But I'd be happy to go through this with the.
Sure, let's go,
Right,
let's go through what you've proposed and then we can,
So I will say, as I just sort of lead off here, getting from the 6 to the 4, as the board knows, has been challenging. And I appreciate the board working with the dilemma that we have and the conundrum that we have a little bit. I share with you the difficulty of that. My 17 years as a superintendent, which is probably close to being longest serving superintendent, close to it in the state. I bring you that experience to share with you that the proposal that I have that is outlined in this memorandum to start with, just as a wee reminder where we left off, is my and the cabinet's proposal to where we left off, and the best advice that we have on maintaining the educational experience that we have for our young people. This is a teaching and learning organization. So the proposals that I have tonight, I actually don't support. I support what I had originally because it's a teaching and learning organization. The department has, many of them are here and so on, but they are the foundation of the teaching and learning that takes place here. And they weren't in the proposal that I presented the first time, so nor do they remain in the proposal. The board asked me to include some. I've included some, but you may not see that reduction right away. And that's not being disparaging to my paraprofessionals. I didn't want to make that either, but at some point I had to make a recommendation to get us to what I thought was a reasonable budget number, and that's what I did, and I stand by that proposal this evening. So I just asked the board, as I know you will, just to ponder the concepts that we're talking about and the trade-offs that we're talking about, because there are ramifications, and it's not going to run the same way. And I can't just take the operations of the district apart behind the scenes. You're not going to have anything. So I just share that as a perspective. So moving through this, the first part of this is just sharing the most current proposal. It's at 4.45. We did say it was 4.39 or 37 the last time. The difference is minimal in the sense of we just changed the pay for participation fee. We took out the CIAC. So when we just put on a sort of blanket participation fee for athletics and clubs, it just came out to the 4.45. So it does eliminate, as a reminder, reduction of the 2 teachers at the elementary class size, increase in that class size in second grade at Holmes and Royal. That's where it would happen. I played out kind of what the current sections would be, what the new sections would be over the years. Participation fees is a flat fee, and $50 for student interest clubs. Again, if the board so decides to have some sort of participation fee, whether it's this or something else, I think we could settle at it. We also had the elimination of the intramurals. That particular proposal includes the 3 reductions, would result in 4.45. And as a reminder to that, the reduction does include the reduction of the 15 paraprofessionals. Keeps in the district website, the board docs, and the professional learning, just to give you a sense of kind of where we left off in that.
so just to stop, you took your proposal that basically was the budget. We restored gifted, and so you've put in a class size adjustment and then showed us where that would actually show up next year, correct?
Right.
And then you've adjusted the participation fees, the model that you would use. And then you've also included the elimination of intramurals, and that's sort of your proposal.
Yes, and that sort of also incorporates 165,000 of ECR, addresses that. Whether the board wants to do that or not, it's our recommendation that we actually address that now.
Okay.
So moving forward to the reduction of the $1 million that was requested, in non-student facing services.
And just to be clear, it was $1 million in other alternatives, not an incremental $1 million. I just want to repeat that again. Sorry to interrupt you.
I don't see much of a difference, but I understand.
No, there's a big difference because we haven't changed the guidance. What I'm
Okay,
saying.
good, okay. I have reduced the professional learning. I don't want to reduce that. I would ask the board also to consider that. There's not much in this budget. I don't think we should be doing nothing. I think some of the state legislative stuff, the K-3 reading and so on and so forth, there's some things we can do. I would look to do this, but if we were considering reducing some other things, then I would obviously have to reduce the professional learning. But it's one of the things that, one of the only things that we asked in this budget. Reduce the curriculum writing, we're reducing that by 30, the suggestion is by 30,000. That just slows down the process. I mean, there's a ramification for all of these. I'm not like making woe is us in terms of these particular cuts, but there are ramifications from them. Eliminate the expenses of the administrative retreat. We can do that. It's not uncommon for at a retreat just to step out of your local environment, get some professional development, whether it's through expertise or otherwise. But we recognize the dilemma we're in, so we've reduced that by the set amount of 15,000. Eliminate some periodicals that are used at the high school for staff professional development. That's a nominal reduction. This is number 5 is collapsing the department chairs. Again, I'm not recommending this, but into 2 administrators, a director of math and science and a director of English and social studies. They would be complemented with, if depending on who was appointed for the math and science, let's say a science teacher was appointed, then we would put a teacher leader, a stipend for the math section, and similarly for the director of English and social studies. At the middle school, we'd also have a stipend positions. The positions would be 207 days, as we would expand those to 11-month positions. That's a reduction of 186,000. That's not, I don't believe that serves the district well, but I was asked to make it in a recommendation, so there it is.
So just slowing down. So you'd have a director of math and science and then a teacher leader directly under that person, director of English and social studies, a teacher leader directly under that person. And then you'd have teacher leaders at the middle school.
Correct.
Is that what you just said?
Yeah, yeah. So the
4
director
teacher
positions would
leaders?
be 6 through 12 still.
Okay, and the directors would be 6 through 12, and you'd have 4 teacher leaders at the middle school?
Yeah, but they're only for stipends. They're not out of the classroom.
I'm just clarifying. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
In the Excel backup or the Excel spreadsheet that you provided, there were 2 sections on this. One said admin recommendation or proposal and one B of E. The admin says collapse department chairs into 2 directors. The other says department chairs to teacher leaders. I guess the idea to show it 2 different ways
So
to figure out what the implications are, because one has savings of 186,000, the other one is 385.
Correct.
You can't do, it's not both. It's
No, it's what, yeah, so it was asked to put on that worksheet what the current model is, what the model I've just described, and then what the model, Greg, you've just described. I think the board asked to include in the questions, Q&As, what that model would look like. And then I was asked to put it into.
It allows you to pick one or the other.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just making sure that I'm reading it right.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yes, that's
You can't
correct.
do, it's one or the other, and it's just showing the implications of the 2
Correct.
different.
Actually, there's 3 choices.
3 choices.
Yeah.
Status quo,
Yeah.
one or other.
Yes, Robin?
Since the teacher leader model is not really described in this memo, could you give some more information on that? Because it is my understanding that our district used to have that in place, correct?
What did we used to have?
That's what we used to have.
1 teacher leader, 6 through 12 for each discipline?
No, when we came, the last one standing, in 2015, we had at the high school 0.8 teaching, 0.2 release time with the stipends, and middle school, they were called curriculum monitors with no release time and stipends. That was in 2015. There were different iterations before then that I think some people could speak to.
Can you remind us why we moved to the current model?
We wanted administrators, we wanted people with content area expertise to be supervising and evaluating staff, writing curriculums, developing common assessments.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
We have a reduction in professional development. And that's, it's $103, sorry, it's $10,000 in special education. That reduces the opportunities for some of our special education teachers to receive professional development in a variety of areas.
Jill,
Go ahead.
just a question on that. That $10,000 in the spreadsheet, it says that that's cut in Orton Gillingham training. Is that correct? It says OG professional development would be cut.
It would be cut, well, right now we do Wilson as well. We're doing PAF and we're considering OG. So as we go through that, but what it would mean is that we would have less candidates going and participating in their initial 3-day training.
I guess I'm just questioning why that would have been chosen as the cut, given the literacy needs that we're going through, but just a question.
Yes, John.
Can I just remind everybody, these are not his priorities or decisions. We've asked him to dig deeper, so these are ours.
Right, but we still need clarification.
Understood,
It
but
just
let's be
wasn't
careful how
clear.
we.
It was not clear in the memo.
Again,
I
I'm
just wanted.
I want to make it clear to everybody that we have asked to dig deeper, okay? So just let's watch our language.
I'm sorry.
The next reduction of 103,000 eliminates a central services special education secretary and also it's a combination of a FERPA position and special education. Implications of this is just timeliness of responses and all of these things, actually many of these, what our community has come to be accustomed to, the quality of service and responses and interventions and quality services, they're all being impacted at one level or another here. Contract out for network manager. Typically, Derg districts do have 2 staff members in this role. We have 2 staff members in the role. We would be contracting out for this. What that might mean is frustrating for the superintendent, because there's one thing that bothers me is like whenever the internet services and digital services aren't available and they're down for a while, it may take longer to get things back up again and get back up online again. But again, that's not a recommendation that I'm making, but it's one of the reductions. Eliminate ProText, Technique, and website upgrade. Those are some softwares. We reviewed all the software line items. These are changes that perhaps were in the works a little bit and I want to sort of pull the trigger a little bit early in the process. I don't know if we're going to be 100% ready for it, but we'll do the best to get caught up for it. We were going to be looking at something like this for next year, and we will jump in earlier in the process and hopefully pull off a seamless transition. Marge, are we good with that, right? Yeah. There's a technology development for network maintenance. Since we're reducing a staff member, some of the professional development that they receive, we deferred that, or we eliminated that.
Is there a dependency between that line item and the actual network
Yes.
manager position? So if you restored the position, you'd need the PD?
Correct.
Thank you.
We're deferring a middle school lab desktops, and they'll just be down and we're not working as efficiently as they might. But we will defer that particular upgrade to that lab. The youth sport participation rental fee, we're suggesting increasing from 44 to 50. But that's for our young people in our groups, our youth groups, for the use of the fields. There's a fee for each student who generally uses them. We're suggesting increasing that. ELP tuition, a recommendation to increase it to 12.5. Given the number, given where everybody else is in the private institutions, we thought that's reasonable. Certainly the board, we have told parents that the fees aren't settled until the actual board makes their decision.
Just a quick question on that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, what are the implications of, I mean, we have flexibility to put that whatever we want, right? What are the implications of putting it to 20, 25, or 30?
So lower enrollment, as we've seen this year, we've had to do a number of transfers because of either economic hardships or free and reduced lunch. We've had some people say that the tuition is too high and they've chosen to go elsewhere. So the higher you make it, there's going to obviously be some choice in terms of how many people are actually going to enroll.
Yeah, I asked the question because I know the broader ELP program costs the district over $1.6 million a year. And so we're either not charging enough or we're not getting enough reimbursement from the state that's requiring it.
So our tuition in terms of like the DERG is pretty comparable to Westport. No pre-K program in public school is 100% covered by tuition. There really is, we're not going to get more state reimbursement either. I mean, if anything, we're seeing less state reimbursement, but the program isn't intended to be self-sustaining like Darien summer schools.
So if we increased it to 30,000 and the enrollment went way down, does the $1.6 million go up or down?
Well, you'd have an issue with the 50-50 ratio that you have to maintain. I don't know if Shirley wants to talk about that, but the less paying students you have, you're going to be imbalanced in your classroom with that ideal 50-50 ratio.
But fiscally, I think the model is you're not ever going to cover your costs. You're not trying to, you're just trying to hit the optimal volume. Actually, trying to get as many people in the door at the right price point.
I just as a follow.
Yeah, please.
Just on that note, what is our current split between the tuition paying students and the special education students in ELP? And is there a wait list for enrollment of families that are the general education wanting to get into ELP?
Laura's always recruiting. The ideal is to have a 50-50 ratio between students with IEPs and typically developing students.
But what is our ratio now? I know we had a couple that just went over to.
We just have some new students. I can report that to the superintendent. I think we're close to that, but I don't want to guess.
Okay, and then is there excess demand to get into the program currently? Do we have families that are waiting that would be tuition paying? I'm just curious.
We're the highest we've been at this point of the year in the last several years. Again, I can give the exact numbers of where we are, but there are students still arriving. And as you saw earlier in the information, some students who were general education students have since become students who are receiving special services. So that balance can change also based on evaluations and recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
And the 50-50 ratio you're referring to, whatever number of special ed comes in, we have to try to get that number of
Yes.
to match it.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's been a number of discussions about catering, right? So we have eliminated catering expenses for Super Saturday, the summer board retreat, and the convocation, and new teacher orientation. I will say that a wee bit, it's fine, we'll cut it, but it just like to say our district can't start the school year with a wee cooking breakfast and for new staff seems a bit ridiculous to me. Yes, I'm suggesting it, but anyway, I believe that it's $11,000. Security, we're eliminating one campus monitor at the high school. That would it's not ideal. I don't lose. I certainly won't lose sleep in the sense of I have to put my head to the pillow knowing our kids are safe. So I'm not questioning that. But again, it's an extra stress on the organization. You've heard tonight about just in our executive session, some things, and that provides somebody at the cafeteria essentially in other areas of the building, but it reduces something. So it's as described. The Cali accreditation for school security, we will not pursue that. That's a quality sort of recognition of the services for school safety. It's something that ordinarily we might like to receive in terms of accreditation for schools' safety and security. That might be something nice to have, but nice to have is probably not necessary at this particular point. So we've reduced that. We've reduced one of our HVAC technicians. From this building to other buildings, we're bringing on new buildings across the school system, which are HHR buildings. This eliminates one of our technicians. Again, this is not ideal either, but that's a reduction of 152,000. We would have to outsource again if we needed that amount. We have reduced facilities overtime, given the reduction of one of the HVACs. Technicians, we feel that some of the overtime may also be reduced there, but that may be offset with contracting out. That brings it just shy of $1 million.
So that's, are those two also dependent on each other, Rich?
Just to clarify, we can't contract out the HVAC work. It's
Yeah.
again, bargaining unit contract. They're not completely tied. I mean, at the end of the day, overtime is largely like incident dependent, right? If you have something break, you want your guys out there to fix it. If you were to cut it and something like that were to happen, we'd have to bring a transfer to the board. During
Joanna and then Katie.
I have a few questions. I didn't realize that we were going through the whole memo and then talking. So I have some questions about the start of the memo.
Okay, let's stay on HVAC and then we can go
Oh,
back.
okay.
Yep. Did you have a question on HVAC? Okay. Going down to one, what does that do if we have somebody on vacation for a week or?
So whether you have somebody on vacation or on all week, or as an example of Royals heat goes down and Tokenique's heat goes down, pick the school that wins out. You could likely have more delayed openings or early dismissals if heat goes down. We have old boilers in a lot of our schools, and then on the other side, you're adding a lot of air conditioning into the schools. And the air conditioning unit that's at Oxbridge is very, very technical and probably takes 3 times the amount of time to work on than a typical air conditioner at the other schools. So it's definitely a difficult cut.
Are the new systems at HHR similar to Oxbridge? Will they be more technical in nature?
No, they are different, is my understanding.
Joanna.
Going back to intramurals, my understanding of elementary level intramurals was that it was through I think it's through the contract that it's the right of first refusal. We have to budget in case a teacher wants, so a teacher can say no about, the teacher has, we have to budget as if every school would have teachers running the intramurals. But then if they decline it, we can go to like Darien after school.
So I think what we would do is speak to the leadership of the DEA and let them know that intramurals haven't run at any school other than Holmes in at least 5 years. Probably more, what we're just talking about. Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think a lot of parents depend on Darien after school. So just wanted to make sure that if we did eliminate that from the budget, even though it's not running, we could still run those programs at those schools.
Right. We look for an MOU with the DEA.
Okay.
Katie.
I'm struggling with this document. I don't think it provides nearly the level of detail that is needed. I would like to see offsets in here. I think it's very difficult to talk about what is being presented as a potential cut without understanding the offset. So for example, HVAC as an example, like, would we be looking at consultant costs? What would be the trade-off? Or if not, the scenario that Rich put, I think, knowing exactly what the professional development being cut is incredibly relevant to the conversation. I think that some of the questions are, some of the writing makes it confusing to even understand what's in here. Like, for example, the catering and the convocation makes me think that the convocation breakfast was left in because it just talks about it positively and doesn't say explicitly that it's being cut. So I'm happy to follow up with some submitted refinement to this, but I think this is going to be a difficult discussion as presented.
Joanna, like along those lines, when you say reduce curriculum writing, $30,000, I understand we have different stages, and is this all teacher time or curriculum writers, people's time that would have?
Can you explain that? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, those are the units, right? So one of the wonderful things about our staff is that the department chairs work with educators at the given grade levels and within the departments to write the curriculum. And that's a really important exercise also in professional learning, because that's how our staff gets to really know their standards well as the standards that are above and below the grade levels that they teach within their disciplines. So yes, that's a curriculum writing cost.
But it's like directly correlates to teacher time?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood it.
Rob?
I have another question on the curriculum writing specifically, because it mentions that we wouldn't be able to or would be delayed on a number of classes. So one question is the AP classes. I thought that already has a set curriculum And similar question for the high school science, math courses, et cetera, which have been around for years. What is required with ongoing curriculum writing projects specifically for those kinds of classes? And then as a follow-up to that, why would we say that those would not happen and then, or that Mandarin 8 or some of our newer classes would not happen either? Because I would think that the newer classes would need to be prioritized and that AP already has an existing curriculum. So if you could just help clarify that, that would be helpful.
So another important thing to note about curriculum writing is one of the things that I think pride ourselves on in Darien Public Schools is that we don't just teach from a program. So even though AP does have an established curriculum, it's really important that our educators are looking at that curriculum and reinforcing exactly how they might use it and manipulate it within their classes to support their students' needs. I was in an AP environmental science classroom, I think just yesterday with Mr. Dockham, and was watching that very thing happen as students are preparing for that exam. When I'm thinking about the curriculum projects and how we'll prioritize them, some of the things that we would consider as a team are, when was the curriculum last written? How outdated is it? Have the standards been revised? Is at least stage 1 written? So we have a general scope and sequence for what needs to happen so that there's consistency across classrooms within a discipline within each of the schools. So this would be the proposal to kind of, it would slow the work down, but to maintain focus where we need to have it.
Okay, and then just to follow up, there was in the initial budget book, there was curriculum writing for SEL at the elementary and middle school level. And I guess I have a question because I thought that curriculum had already been written a year ago or 2 years ago. So what is the ongoing cost and need for that specifically?
So the ongoing cost with SEL is really around morning meeting. Not everything has been entered into EduPlanet in stage 1. And I think that level of transparency is really important for the community. And additionally, you'll note that we did include curriculum writing for the middle school to support Flex. And that would support that work as well.
Thank you.
Brenna.
So for the AP courses, to Dr. Fedigan's point, the teachers don't teach specifically to the exam. The exam has an outline of material that is the students are expected to know, and therefore the teachers are expected to teach. However, they can choose to teach this in whichever order that they'd like. AP Environmental Science specifically for the past exam season was taught out of order, and teachers can determine the most logical flow of information and the most logical organization of each chapter and each point. But it's so important for us to have that pocket of flexibility when it comes to writing the curriculum because the exams themselves are flexible. And we do have a very high exam success rate tangibly in this district. So we know that what we have works.
Thank you.
Anyone else? In the memo. Thank you, Brenna.
Is Kevin online? by any chance?
Yes.
Or
Katie,
Jack, yeah.
we do have Kevin online, the facilities manager, to answer that question specifically.
Good, Kevin. Hello,
Yeah,
Kevin.
I think that, to be honest, most of these need some further expansion on the answers and the offsets, and I think it makes sense to have them documented as well. Even to the network and to the consultant fees, to the proposal of the department chairs, I think a visual would be really helpful from what we had and what those costs are. Just a couple line paragraph is not really serving.
Okay.
I will say just to that I didn't want to be self-serving and put up so there may be a happy medium there. I was just trying to give a sense of the impact. But anyway, Kevin's here if we want to talk to him, but I don't know if we do.
Yes, please, Kevin. Hi.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So the proposed cut to the HVAC technician, as Rich teed up for me, would really restrict our ability to respond when needed. And with new systems, as much as with old, there's more response needed than ever before. We do have quite a bit more preventative maintenance that we now have to conduct at Oxbridge, whether it's simple things like filter changes on equipment that we just never had before. It takes quite a bit of time to get around to all 8 buildings and do all those PMs properly. So losing this position would put us in quite a bind.
Kevin, I understand part of what you're talking about is routine maintenance, but part is also in the case of an emergency. One of the questions, as I was contemplating this, is with all new systems, is it less necessary in the short term? Or does all new systems not change anything or add?
So what we're starting to live and breathe at Oxbridge is that the new systems require a great deal more PMs becoming more familiar with the systems because they are so finicky, because they're so now highly technical, that missing one simple component check, cleaning, what have you, really wreaks havoc on the rest of the system.
Thank you. Other questions for Kevin?
I've not related to HVAC.
Go ahead.
No. Hi, Kevin. So
Hello.
we heard during public comment, I don't know if you were listening, but there was a bunch of comments or a few comments about the paving. Can you discuss whether what deferring that for a year does? And is it absolutely necessary that we do that this year? What are you thinking on that, please?
Sure. So the paving at Tokenique was already deferred 1 year prior. It was on the capital plan for a number of years and it had aged in appropriately. So we've already paused on it for 1 year. So to have it in this year is just a follow-up from last year's proposal.
And at the high school?
The high school was not on last year's. It was just age appropriate for this time around. High school's 15 years old. Obviously the asphalt is starting to crack and deteriorate.
Is it a safety issue?
So no, it's definitely not a safety issue, but it certainly won't get better over time.
Katie, point of information, could you maybe clarify for the public the difference between the capital and the operating budget, Jill?
Sure. So there's a couple differences. Our operating budget, when we use that number lately, 4.39, that's our operating budget. Those are a lot of that is salaries and what we use to run our buildings. We have a separate capital plan, which has a bunch of line items. Each of those line items represents a specific change that we're making to a building or a facility or the grounds. What is particularly important technically is that we have only care, custody, and control of those buildings. We don't own them. They're actually owned by the town. So when we go to propose specific changes to the buildings, again, or the grounds, we will propose them line by line, and the Board of Finance and the RTM have the ability to reject them line by line. Whereas in our operating budget, we receive a single appropriation. So right now our budget is set at our operating budget's about 125 million. If we receive 125 million, then we decide how that 125 million gets dispersed. And if we need to make a transfer, we do that internally. But because we don't own the buildings, there's a different relationship between ourselves and the town.
And
Anything
so
else?
therefore, the capital budget is not part of the percentage increase that we're
Yes.
discussing.
So
for
if we
this
were to
budget.
defer a parking project, it would not bring that
Yes.
poor number down. Yes.
Yes,
Same
correct.
tax rate.
Yes, but, okay. Other questions for Kevin while we have him?
Even if they're related to the memo.
That's okay. We're talking about the budget. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just wondering, and in your RC, you have, sorry, one second. You have $35,000 for uniforms, and I was wondering how many employees that covers?
Rich, do you know?
So a little over 50.
50.
So it's all the maintenance, grounds, custodians, part-timers.
That came up a year or two ago, the dollar amount, and can you remind us of, we decided to keep it in at that price point at the time. I just don't, because of the number of staff.
Don't really recall that. So all the custodians by contract have to have obviously like pants and shirts that say Darien, and the maintenance workers as well, and they get food allowances, for example, shoe allowances, and so it covers all that for the custodians in the schools. It covers that for the maintenance guys. It covers that for the grounds guys, and it covers that for the part-timers. And obviously we added the part-time custodians at the high school this current year in place of the contracted cleaning company as well.
Katie?
Thank you, Rich. I didn't realize that those were contractual obligations. And so it's fair to assume that we have looked at and we're getting the most cost efficient like uniforms that we're providing?
So this year we switched vendors because the increase from the previous vendor for the uniforms was too large, which is why you don't actually see an increase in the account. So we have shopped around for different vendors. Kevin's picked a new vendor this year, but they are contractual in terms of what they get.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Brenna?
I guess forgive me for Mr.
Monrad.
Mr. M. I am just confused as to what the specific need is for repaving besides for aesthetic purposes and ease.
Oh,
Sure. So a number of years ago, we conducted a facility study. In addition to boilers and roofs and windows and things, they actually noted asphalt and paving as part of the 10-year proposal for what the district should undertake as far as capital projects are concerned. So these projects have been on that list for quite some time, and as we've chipped away at the lists, we're trying to complete all the projects that were noted.
John?
I would just add also, because, you know, this kind of layers in or is enveloped in with town capital needs also. So the town can do proper scheduling and understanding of what capital needs that our district has and how that floats into the broader town budget. And that's why it's important we do studies a few years ahead of our facilities. So we're in complete understanding of what the next project might be. And that's why, you know, Middlesex has been targeted for that.
Yeah, that's why we have a 5-year capital plan at all times where we try to plan out the spend so that it's not a surprise when it shows up. And we try
Peaks
to,
and valleys.
and there are as many peaks and valleys, and we try to stay ahead of things before they fail. So that you don't actually want lots of potholes, for example. You want to get to it before it gets to that point. Anything that I missed on that, Kevin or Rich?
No.
Okay. Katie?
Thank you. Amy, as we're talking about looking at the curriculum writing and potentially slowing it down, how might doing so, changing our goals for what we hope to accomplish, how might that impact our staffing needs? If we are going to, you know, kind of lessen the amount that we're hoping to accomplish, does it make sense to concurrently also look at perhaps shifting our staffing needs as well?
Well, you know, the staffing needs are not only to support the curriculum writing, they're also to support professional learning and ongoing instruction that happens in each of the content areas and across the levels. So I would say no. The curriculum writing cost is not only something that the department shares with, of course, building administrators, supervise, and leading teacher teams. It's primarily the curriculum writing cost is the teacher hours for those projects.
Right. So just in thinking about how, you know, we're having conversations about kind of streamlining and replicating models of administration across different levels. So for example, last year, Dr. Hadley had proposed adding 2 APs, one to the middle school and the high school, and had said that this mirrors the model at the elementary level. So then if we're looking now also at potentially changing department shares into, you know, kind of teacher leader models so that we have, you know, active teachers and subject matter experts. If we are looking to, you know, kind of find those efficiencies as we did with the technology department, you know, is that not something that we could do at central office as well in curriculum? We used to have 2 people and there was a more junior role that had been eliminated, keeping the senior, you know, is something like that, or is looking at, you know, some other model, you know, in terms of how we might create opportunities for our teachers to do some of that work as opposed to having the large administrative staffing.
For sure, teacher leadership and curriculum writing is incredibly important. And that's why, you know, even last year, I think we held 3 curriculum writing sessions in May and maybe early June, where we had more than 100 teachers who were there learning about UBD and the curriculum writing process and engaging as teams ready to set off and what we have left to accomplish in our curriculum writing calendar. Curriculum writing we've talked about is iterative, something that is never done. It should not be static. The other piece is, you know, there's a difference between having a written curriculum and, an assured curriculum that's intended and actually the one that is experienced by kids. And what I would argue is the support that administrators across the departments, of course, we don't have one for every single department, but broadly, we should be covering the departments so that teachers are supported in implementation. There's a tremendous amount of professional learning that happens within those coaching conversations. At times, the department chairs are modeling for our staff, and teachers and department chairs are learning together. So I don't see them as the very same thing. I don't see parallel efficiencies that can be found in that way.
We did reduce 2 administrators of central services into 1, and then reduce another technology position from administration. So we have done that. I just can't see taking administrators, replacing them with teachers, and asking the assistant superintendent for curriculum to run with that. That's just a hard ask.
So, go ahead, Sarah.
I would love to get a little more detail about, I fully understand that you don't want these models, both of you. I will lay a stake in the ground. I don't either. I would love to understand why you think these are not as good as our current model. And I'm hoping you can do a little more specificity and like what would actually happen 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. What do you envision in these 2 separate models?
So what we envisage for the model we have now?
No, like if the board decided to change the model of our current model of department chairs, what would the impact be, not only next year, but further down the road?
Well, probably half the people, you see here will be here. That's the first thing.
And that's something really important to keep in mind.
I'll just say, like, you're impacting not only just structurally, operationally, but you're impacting culturally. The district, and that just can't be understated. I don't know who else will be around. I don't know if my assistant superintendent will be around. I'm just being honest with you, right? That's just
Sarah's question was operational, please.
I honestly don't know what the operation with that would look like. If we have two director positions, if that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know more about both.
So this, I'm going to respond without great specificity, but a quick analogy.
Yeah.
What Brenna was just talking about, the question with Mr. Monrette, and then Board Chair McCammon talked about potholes, and you don't want to have potholes. You want to take care of things as you go. From a teaching and learning perspective, which is the sole purpose for us to be in a learning organization, I believe you need a very strong infrastructure to constantly be looking at curriculum that's developed, ensure appropriate implementation so that the staff is supported. You're developing assessments that are constantly measuring the effectiveness of the curriculum and making adjustments where necessary, and that you're providing the professional learning to support those endeavors. I think we've also talked about, the assistant principals and principals who are also instructional leaders, but have a great deal of operational tasks that they need to complete every single day, often that are not even on their agenda or schedule. They can't anticipate, right? It's just the shape of how their day plays out. So the partnership between a building administrator and a department chair, discipline specific, to really guide the teaching and learning core of our function is really critical. And so I think it's something that you would see as an erosion over time, high quality instructional practices when there isn't that level of, high quality feedback within the specific discipline. So we would just, eroding more and more discipline specific.
So
support.
if you have a teacher leader position that is a 0.8 and a 0.2 release time, what does that do operationally? And how effective can that position be in keeping a top district current with their curriculum?
So I can't imagine any teacher that I know who's a really dedicated and effective teacher being able to actually function at just a 0.8. I think most teachers, when you have them at a 0.8, the commitment that you see from that person is generally even more than a 1.0. Teachers are taking home papers, they're lesson planning, they're collaborating with colleagues, they're seeking their own professional learning, and I'm sure, many other things to keep pace with the needs of the students before them. So to think that a 0.8 and then the 0.2 on balance, I don't know what we could actually expect a teacher to get done with simply a 0.2 release. When their primary concern, they would hear from me, would always need to be their students. That would always need to be. It would not be the administrative duty. That would go along with, from a teacher's perspective, just filling in a 0.2 release. Their primary responsibility would have to be the kids.
if it also have an impact across not only the classrooms, the responses to our community members, what they expect, special education is going to be impacted because of the number of administrators we have versus the actual teachers. If there's an area that is content specific, and I think most people would agree with this, it's at the secondary level. And most teachers value the expertise that is provided at the administrative level. Maybe not always agree with their administrators, right? But they appreciate the expertise of the content that they provide, and that's just one of the things that's not going to happen at the extent that it is now.
Dr. Adley, if I can just add one other thing, something that I'm proud of as a school system this past year that we've implemented by way of the strategic plan is the Aspiring Leader Academy. With our staff, we have a core of, I don't know, Marge, probably 30 teachers across departments and grade levels, a really magnificent group. And I know that they're all asking really fabulous questions, right? About how do you enter into leadership for a school and district leadership type role in teaching and learning. And, I know that many of those people would be aspiring to be not only assistant principals, but department chairs, especially those that really love curriculum work. So
And
I
actually,
think that's a
the
recruitment and
actual model is
retention.
actually working right now, just like in the short term. If you can just sort of water this, you have expertise. Actually, people have stepped out of the department chair model and actually grown into the assistant principal model, which is exactly what we want them to do, right? Grow our staff, keep our staff. It's actually working. I'll leave it at that.
Katie.
Thank you. I would like to see when we talk about even just the potential of changing the way that we're looking at curriculum and department chairs. I think that we absolutely have to look at three models concurrently. We have to look at having dedicated department chairs. We have to look at having no department chairs and just the teacher leader model. The one in this document actually seems to be the worst of both to me. It doesn't make sense to consolidate where you have one subject matter expertise and then you wind up with two subjects, by having two that don't have that. That doesn't make any sense to me. We have had this model in the past, so we know that it can work. We do have, we've heard at the table a lot that people like to have active teaching curriculum instructors. Additionally, I'm having trouble with the way that we're hearing contradictory statements at the table tonight. We're hearing that we can't have a 0.8 and a 0.2, but at the middle school, like the whole conversation between 4 and 5 classrooms doesn't change anything for our students. So it's one way or the other. It's either teaching 4 classrooms is the same as teaching 5 or it's not. And to say that there's a cultural impact to changing a model of department chairs and there's not on paraprofessionals. I really think that we are losing our vision for this district. And we are hearing widely from the community that they feel the same way. That what is our goal here? What are we looking for? What are we cutting? And for what goal? Truly, if there are things that we cannot live without, if we are facing the degradation of the excellence of Darien schools, then we need to say that and we need to band together and we need to defend the money that we need. Right now, we are just picking and throwing at things, and we have a responsibility to go through every single RC and every piece of an option that is presented in front of us. We have to explore. We have to understand not just professional development, but what professional development, and how does that tie from early literacy and our youngest grades all the way up to what does it mean for our high school students? That's our job. And if we truly cannot be comfortable with these cuts, and I'm not comfortable with a lot of them, that's our job too.
100%.
We cannot back into a number and crumble the education system in Darien.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, the 9 of us need to figure out, where are we comfortable? I am not comfortable with a lot of this. I am not comfortable with making our district worse. I am not here to sit at this table and make our district worse. And to me, that is exactly what this budget does. And we have put our superintendent and our cabinet in a position where they have put these horrible things on the table. And yeah, they're horrible. I will say it. They are not good for our students. They're not good for our staff. They're not good for us. They're not good for our town. Are we going to sit here and have the Board of Finance tell us that we have X amount of money? And you can jiggle around all you want, like,
Excuse me,
it is.
excuse me, Sarah, I
Sarah.
just shifted my seat.
Okay, so listen.
Can I get an apology?
I'm
please?
sorry.
Okay, all right, John,
Like-
Katie. Okay.
Listen, I don't, we are all emotional about this. We are talking about kids, we are talking about people, we are talking about our town. If our town is not going to pay for what our education costs and what our education at the level that we expect it costs, what are we doing?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is we do have to turn over the rocks and we do have to see what it costs. We do have to assess where our priorities are. If we don't ask what can we do, what is next, what might happen, then we have a hard time getting to our priorities. And so that's been part of this exercise. What do we truly value? And I think there's a difference between understanding a framework for starting a conversation and backing into a number. I don't think that so I think we have to be very careful not to get stuck on what number do I like or do I not. You have to get comfortable with saying where, like I said earlier, where do our dollars go? Which priorities are they attached to? And are we doing this as efficiently as possible? And those are two critical things that we do have to do at this board table. It has been uncomfortable in a number of cases. And so we might have to talk about some ways to shift how we talk. But this is never not going to be comfortable unless we do it all behind the scenes.
But my point is, if education costs a 6% increase, it costs a 6% increase.
And we don't get a 6% allocation.
Well, then we present what we need for our district and other bodies can decide if that's appropriate or not.
Okay, John and then Brenna.
So we are in a budgeting process and we don't have unlimited resources. I do think we can actually coalesce around many elements of the superintendent's budget. This process is partly because we rejected the superintendent's and his cabinet's recommendations. IDEA is a perfect example. None of us like this process, folks. But I think if we go down as we have in the past now and create some sort of package, if you will, a proposal of budget initiatives based off the superintendent's budget, I think we're going to get pretty close to where we thought we were going to get. There might be differing elements amongst us all in terms of what that final number is based on kind of the trailing categories. But I think, we're at the point where we have to start making decisions. And where we end up as a majority of this board is going to be where we do propose to the Board of Finance, who can reject it, and we can go through that process like we did last year again. So that's what the point I was going to try to make.
Brenna.
Might we also not back into numbers, but rather names? And might we ground ourselves in what's so dear to us, the community that we built up and the students that we work for? And may we also remember that it's not just 0.8 FTE, it's a Mr. Mazone, or it's a Principal Dunn. It's these people it's these faces that we just can't forget and that we must ground ourselves in our community.
Yes, and I certainly appreciate the grounding. The only thing that I'll just tweak a little bit about that, just because we've had some confusion from the public, that board members do not hire and fire any staff members except for the superintendent. So we, yes, certainly need to understand that we're talking about people, but we don't have control over who the individual is. So it's just a technicality, and because the public's a little confused, I just want to clarify. Robin, did you have your hand up?
On your note about thinking about what our goals are and what is the most important and what are the most important priorities for our district, I do want to kind of take us back to our strategic plan. Goal number 1, enhancing teaching and learning. And I would personally view that as our number 1 priority. And I would hope that as a board of 9 people, we could come to a conclusion about a budget that would allow us to enhance teaching and learning and keeping our students first in our priorities. We, as a Board of Ed, did give guidance to come in at last year's level, which is 4.73. Most recently, New Canaan and Westport, both of those Board of Eds just approved budgets of 4.67, 4.69% increases unanimously. I understand that the Board of Finance gave us guidance, but I think it's very important for us to go through all of the detail, RC by RC. I think there might be additional opportunities we haven't talked about yet. I think we need to think creatively. We need to try to figure out how we can expand the pie. We need to talk about revenue. We need to talk about many different things, and some of them might be longer term, but I think to John's point, I do think that we can get there, but I would hope that as a group, we really think creatively and ultimately vote on a budget that we truly believe will help us to accomplish the teaching and learning goals of our district, to keep us at the top level of education that our community has come to expect.
Thank you. With that, let's move on to RC1. Let's shift over to the RCs.
Madam Chair, are we doing the questions or?
Do we have questions still?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that there were questions that were submitted by staff or board members. They're highlighted. I just don't want to ignore them. If you want to talk about them, that's okay too.
Sure,
We go through every question.
no, just if there's, let's go to that. In RC,
You've answered, all of them have been addressed except for the ones that are in I guess pink or mauve or whatever.
yeah, so there's RC6. Why don't we these questions are all organized by RC, so why don't we do RC by RC just in general? So it could be
Okay.
questions and a conversation about the RC at the same time, just for efficiency's sake. Okay, so RC1. Yes, Robin.
I have a question about the Wellness Center and whether or not we might be able to try to find additional funding or alternative ways of funding the $44,000, for example. And again, I'm putting out some ideas here. The Student Activity Fund is one, looking for other grants potentially within the community or otherwise where we might be able to find some funding, or alternatively, in the past, this district has used staff or parent volunteers for things like the Middlesex Information centers at the elementary schools in kindergarten and first grade when I first moved to Darien, where parents actually volunteered and came into the school. So one thought would be that potentially parents might be interested in helping with the Welcome Center as opposed to being a paid employee, because we already have the activities. We've got a lot of supplies. And it's just an idea, because I know we already do have the PTO help organize for the College Visit Center, where parents volunteer their time to come and be there when the college reps are here. So as an idea, I think that should be something that we might be able to explore as alternatives to help with our students, because the PTOs also they gave the furniture for the Wellness Center. They are very in tune with the needs of the students, and this might be an opportunity for us.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you. Anything else in RC1? Okay. RC2.
I just had a quick
Yes,
follow-up.
Greg.
On the guidance counselor questions, are we in line for both the number of counselors as well as the assistants to the guidance counselors versus the rest of the district versus the DERG?
So that we do have our guidance counselors here, actually, our director of guidance. The last presentation we had, we were in line with the number of compatible with the surrounding district, and also in line with the ratio that NEAS would ask. I don't want to pull somebody from the audience that shouldn't really do that. So the answer any further than that.
Do you want the information?
We are in line with the DERG for both. And just in terms of the Wellness Center, you cannot use student activity funds to fund the Wellness Center. It's an impermissible use of student activity fund.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. Okay. RC2. Switch.
We're just asking questions on the questions, right?
No, if
By
you have
RC.
a one about the overall RC.
Okay.
We're gonna do both at the same time, just it's 10.
You said Fitch?
Yes.
I know in the past, there's been some conversations about having students from other districts come in. If we're not at our, like if some sort of exchange maybe, or for tuition paying students from other districts that don't have a Fitch. Has that been looked at again recently, if that's at all feasible, or if we're horse trading on transition services or something like that, like New Cane has?
So they all have a Fitch now.
They all have a Fitch now? Oh, thank you.
Which is the first. Okay, RC's, RC3. Robin,
Can I add to the ad cut spreadsheet if I have a line item that I would like to add?
Wait, I didn't think we were doing ad cut. I just thought we were discussing.
sorry, we're going through the questions and the RCs at the same time. So it's simultaneous because it's already 10 o'clock.
So
And
Okay, so we need
And we vote next, well,
Yeah, so we are doing ad cut.
If you have, the idea was to be at a higher level, but if you do have something. Go ahead.
I'd like to add the addition of Middlesex Club student interest fees at the $50 level, which was originally in the participation fee memo that the admin had presented. Which I think was 23,000 in revenue.
So point of clarification, do we need to cut something that's in the memo but not technically added? So like for going back to DHS for the $50 fee, is that something I would need to cut? Or is that not even added?
If it's in the spread, so sorry, which is the $50? If it's in the spreadsheet, it's already in there.
Okay, because the way that the memo is written is that, you could do this, you could do that,
I think you should just clarify like the way that, this is our first time doing it, like the way that it works is all you're doing is just putting it on the spreadsheet.
Right,
Then we
but
talk
usually,
about
but
it.
this is not from the initial budget. I thought we only add or cut from the presented budget.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure which item you're talking about. So you're talking about how Alan's
Okay,
adjusting the fee?
I'll just go back to the beginning. Can we go back to DH1? I would like to
Yes.
only put in $100 participation fee for athletics only.
Got
No
it.
clubs, and with a $400 family cap.
Okay, so a model with $100 athletics only fee and a $400.
Can we just stay RC by RC though?
Yes,
That would be
let's just
RC
back on one.
11.
Oh, that's 11, yes. Okay.
Oh, okay. So then I would like to cut $50 club fee for DH.
But it's
Club
already on the
council
spreadsheet. It's already on.
We're
the
not
spreadsheet.
voting right
As
now.
cutting it?
It's just on the
So
spreadsheet.
the only thing we need to do tonight is just get something on and
Right,
just have
okay.
something on the
So let's
spreadsheet.
agree on
So you can yes or no it.
that. Okay.
Yeah, that's your original question.
So
Yes.
you're going to say yes or no.
Point of information.
Yes,
So we had a discussion about the wellness center.
it should be on the spreadsheet now.
So it's now on the spreadsheet are we putting numbers next to it, or we're staying at a higher level? We're just putting it on there for further conversation.
I think it just needs to get on there right now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So to clarify, that puts the wellness center at $44,000 on the sheet?
Yes,
Okay.
Rich, you getting these numbers?
that's just the value of the staff member. It's not the value of the staff member. That is the staff member's salary. Okay. RC3, did we do? Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm looking at the spreadsheet, which is not oriented by RC, so it's a bit of sifting. So this has that, oh, okay. The RC is one, the recommendation is that it's coming from the admin, and that's where the department chairs are in there. Okay, so then I would like to also see what it would look like to be listed for discussion if everything were to move to a uniform teacher leader.
I think you put that
That's in there,
That's in
in the
there.
orange.
You might not, have down on the bottom, I think, or you might not have the newest one.
I don't think that's the one I'm operating off of. This one looks different.
There was a new one that went out.
Do you mean just the four, or do you also mean like the music director and the director of it, like
Just
everything?
give me a second to check my sheets. Thank you.
That's fine. We'll keep moving and then you just give us a holler. Okay, Katie? All right, RC3. All right, RCs 5 through 10. We have all the paras in the spreadsheet already. Yes.
Oh, yes, the pairs are in.
Pairs are in the spreadsheet, as are the
I'd
interns.
like to also cut one building sub per
Building.
per building.
Okay, so add a building sub in, please, Rich. I have a question. Is there any value in doing a hybrid model of paras and interns? And if so, what would that look like? Margin Rich or Amy or?
I mean, you can really do anything you want. So what it looks, well, it's true. We did 3 for 2 and part of that was to save costs. So we did 3 to 2 interns. But you can do any kind of a hybrid. I mean, I would like to preserve the building subs because they've been really helpful covering classes this year. You know, the question is if you want to put some paras back and cut interns, that might be a better way to do it.
That, Jill, that was my thinking, like get rid of one building sub, but keep the intern, so you're up a body.
Okay, okay. So I think maybe that's sort of a question, because there were 2 different issues that were in the paras discussion. One was financial and how are we solving for a financial piece. But part of why I think you guys raised the paras is because there's an operational issue in that they're trying to cover classes and that's not really what the position's intended for. So my question is, can you have a smaller model for paraprofessional deployment and then supplement with an intern? And I would say if we want to look at the whole mix, whether it's building subs, interns, paras, is there a compromise model?
There comes a point where, and I'm very being respectful for anybody who's sitting in here who's a paraprofessional. Given that we're talking about absences or being used for different things, there comes a point where it's perhaps not worth. It's perhaps not worth keeping one versus 3 of them, to be honest with you.
Well, if the operational problem is that we literally don't have enough people in the building to cover these different meetings and pull out times.
Well, that's a problem too.
For 25%, would we rather just put a dedicated person in the building?
Right.
Just for covering the subs and keeping the paras as they are.
Right.
Doing what they're supposed to be doing.
So that's what the building subs are.
Sorry?
That's what the building subs are.
Right, but we'll have 3 building subs and 0 interns. If we have 2 interns and 2 building subs, that's 4 people.
Right, but the interns aren't there for the full year.
Well, you said they were there for the full year minus the 10
They
weeks.
student teach.
For 10 weeks.
For 10.
10 weeks. Right, yeah,
Right.
they're there for the full year. There's a 10-week
Right,
period.
there's
where
10
they
weeks
can't
when
stop.
they're not available, so cutting the building sub would make those 10 weeks even more problematic for coverage. I mean, we added the 3rd building sub last year. I mean, there are some districts that, and Rich may know the exact FTE, they just put the paras in kindergarten, like point.
So there are some districts that do the equivalent of a 0.5 para for every kindergarten section. So here that would be like 10 paras as opposed to 15, but you wouldn't be having them, let's say, in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th.
Okay, so you do it in kindergarten and then you'd put maybe 1 intern in for the
I
coverage.
mean, you still might end up pulling them, you know, for coverage purposes, but you'd at least, if people came to work every day, you'd have paras in kindergarten.
Okay. Okay, Robin.
Just on that note, then if you had the paras in kindergarten, would you have 1 student intern or 2 or your original to help with coverage?
I mean, 1 intern would be great.
I was suggesting 1 simply because mathematically, if the paras are subbing, each of the 3 is subbing around 30%. Times 3, you get around 90%. You're pretty close to 1 person.
So Rich, do you know off the top of your head, like general ballpark, 2 paras plus 1 intern? What is that comparatively to that $1.1 million?
So you'd be cutting 5 paras at roughly 80,000 piece. And then the intern would be about 17. So we would still be saving something.
If you reduce the paraprofessionals, they'll end up being either in kindergarten or the lowest grade, essentially. I mean, that's where they'll be used educationally.
Thank you.
Fundamentally.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else in 5 through 10?
So can you remind me, please, if we went to no paras, just student interns, 3 building subs, what happens when these interns are doing their student teaching work?
coverage would be more difficult. I mean, just would, they're not available. They have to be in a dedicated classroom for 10 weeks, so they wouldn't be available to cover.
So either way, there's issues with coverage. Whether you have 2 and 2, whatever you have, they're unavailable for at least 10 weeks.
There's an issue with coverage as long as our average absent rate of teachers is over 13 a year. It's just, you know, there just aren't enough bodies in the buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just have another
Yeah.
question. I'm moving backwards a little bit, but I went to the end of the question list. There's the list of all the different consultants. Is consolidating Teen Talk with a wellness center an option?
No. Sorry. Operationally, it's not just given the nature of the council that would take place. It's just it's a different function. That counselor essentially is one-on-one. They will do some group work and stuff, but that counselor, Teen Talk counselor, is available to individual students throughout the day, families throughout the day. It's not really something that would be done in that particular setting.
And also, isn't Teen Talk technically the counselors employed by Kids in Crisis, and it's the Kids in Crisis program that we're embedding in our school?
Yes.
Well, that's a function of what she does, though. I mean, what does she do on the ground every day is some of the things I'm just describing.
Follow up?
Yes.
To that response that was in the list, that was my question. I was a little more that I asked if we have any anticipated. These look like the items you're planning to use for consultants. Not questioning your ability to bring in other consultants, but do you have anyone else you're thinking like you might want to bring, like the scheduling consultant or anybody else? I just want to make sure this is totally comprehensive.
I would say to, thanks, David. I'd say to that, we didn't avoid looking ahead. For the most part, some of those will carry forward. For the most part, it wouldn't exempt us coming forward with someone different, but we haven't we don't have that plan and not telling you about it. It's just, some of those will just move forward or replicate it with someone else.
All right, so there's nobody like, there's no nice to haves or maybes out there. This is pretty comprehensive.
Yes, that's.
Things change, I guess.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. The list of consultants list.
In the end,
Yeah, that one, correct.
to stay on consultants, but it's not in the, it's in the jumping around RCs. Jill, I don't know if you want me to.
I would just went backwards because it's 1 and 3 was.
Well, yes, in the consultants, it's everything.
I
So there are some people listed in the curriculum RC, that their names, I'm just wondering if they actually are consultants and just were also listed here.
What question's that, Joanna?
So,
Is it on the question list or?
well, it's related to the question list. You have a list of all consultants at the end.
Okay.
But going through the RC 19, I see there's an Ellen Tuckner and a Holly Clark. And then, also we spoke earlier about sometimes having someone go to the administrative retreat, which I think was taken out. But I just want to make sure that, Ellen Tuckner and Holly Clark are they consultants? Are they just, what are they? Who are they?
They are. Holly Clark is a consultant for technology. She supported some of the work with AI and some of the work that the teachers in the gifted program were engaging in curriculum development. She also was our convocation speaker at the beginning of the year. Ellen Tuckner is supporting some of our work at the elementary level with data analysis, was supporting having our students, one of her main goals is helping us to get to a place where we have all of our kids strong decoders when they leave 2nd grade. And she's really supporting the revision of our MTSS processes, leading that work so it's going to be consistent across the 5 elementary with Julie Droller.
They should be added to the list.
Right,
Correct.
that's why I'm
Yeah,
just worried
correct,
this is not a
correct.
full
Should be all.
picture
Correct.
of everything.
They should be added to the list.
Because they're across a different RC. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So
we
Every single
only
consultant.
listed
line item.
consultants in the consultant account. So things like Holly Clark are considered professional development.
Could we ask for a redo?
Yeah, that's what we did do. We did the consultant line item. so-
Okay, all
So you're
right.
saying across RCs?
Yes.
Like basically, who are you bringing in that is not employed by DPS? Is
Yeah,
that what you're
that-
looking for?
Yes.
Just so we
Kind
have an
of a
understanding.
follow-up.
Yes.
And I apologize, this may be on me because I was not anticipating going RC by RC quite the fashion we are tonight.
Nobody was.
I may not be alone. I'm
You're
hoping
not.
we'll have an opportunity to give written suggestions and comments after we flag general areas tonight. in proposed line items to be added to the spreadsheet. I don't know if it's best for Rich to maybe collect those after this broad discussion we're having this evening.
I mean,
My concern is that how does the public know what we've added?
Yeah.
Well, they'll see the updated spreadsheet.
Well, but not until Monday before Tuesday.
True.
Tuesday's the public
So-
hearing.
So I would say, let's try to get them this evening. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, the purpose of the public hearing is not so much so that the public can respond line by line, but really more so that the public can talk to us from a higher level about what their priorities are. If this budget reflects, I mean, we're starting to hear some of it already, but if this budget reflects the community values, et cetera, and what the community wants to see in the budget. So, technically line items can be added and subtracted up until the night that we vote. We just try to do it as early as possible to give the public optimal visibility into what we're discussing. So let's try to stay pretty close to the process. Okay. We are, let's go back to RC by RC and try to stay that way. We are still on 5 to 10. Are there any questions about the RC, or is there anything that budgetarily people want to either add to the spreadsheet or discuss further? Okay, let's go to RC 11. Robin?
So I have some line items that I have some questions, but it might lead to some additional adds. On the contracted athletic trainers, and Rich, I don't know if it helps to the account number. Do you need that? The cost went from like 140,000 in 2022-23. Now it's 210,000. What was the reason for the increase? And do we feel that we are doing that the most efficiently possible? Because it looks like we used to do it in-house. Now we do contracted. I'm just asking the question.
In 23, it was 92, not the 148. And that was because we only had one contracted trainer and then we had one district trainer. Then it went to 204, which it stayed at 204 for another year because we have two trainers who have contracted out, district employees. It's going to 210 next year. It is less expensive than having our own district employees do the benefits.
And are they full-time, or are they on an hourly basis just after school when the sports are happening, or how does that work?
So they have an allotment of 40 hours a week, so essentially a full-time.
And are they utilized by the students 40 hours a week?
I'm assuming so. I would have to ask
Like during the
Chris.
school day? Because that's why
No,
I'm
I think
asking.
it's during like when games are and practices. and
But
things
is
like
that 40 hours a week?
40 total hours a week, including weekends. Yeah.
I'm just asking about the usage. Are we fully utilizing them to pay that level? That's why I'm asking.
So I'll check with Chris, but I'm assuming the answer is yes.
Okay.
So we'll check that.
And then the other question was on the fees account, which over the past 5 years went from 25,000 to 62,000. I know Chris had said that there's an increase because of other postseason tournaments, entry fees, different things. And I guess the question I have is, if we have added additional postseason tournaments, are those all FCAC in-season events? Or if not, if we're seeing a huge increase in entry fees for additional events that we never used to do before, is that something that should be paid separately outside of the season?
So I don't believe it's anything new. I can double check with Chris.
I think Chris said that there were lots of new things and other teams that are doing things now that they never were doing before. So that's why I'm
We can
asking.
check with Chris. I know the larger portion of the increase year over year is just the fee to CIAC.
Okay,
But I can check with him if there's anything new.
okay, thank you. And then on the interscholastic officials account, and this one is the one where it has to do with the Turkey Bowl. So the question I have is because the amount 2 years ago when we did not do the Turkey Bowl was 180,000. And it increased significantly for this following year when we do not do the Turkey Bowl. And I'm wondering why we only have a $5,000 increase instead of a $38,000 increase. So
Each year they do get the increases. So it's compounded with increases, and then we have more night games. And so the night games add to that cost as well.
So for the officials, we're paying more because of more, okay, all right. The other question, I had asked about this previously, the hockey games, the off-duty police, do we really need 4? Because it says we could have 2 to 4, whereas all the other sports have 2. except
Once
for
we
football.
request police, we don't have any say over how many police we get.
Even if we pay for them?
Correct.
So we have no say
Not for the-
regardless of the
Not for
cost?
police officers. So our say is the campus monitors,
Okay,
but not the police officer.
okay. And then finally, advertising revenue, which we're very thankful to the Booster Club for their efforts on our behalf on this. The question I have here is because they did present to the Finance Committee potentially expanding this if there was a desire to do so to Stadium East and the Oval, and said that they had access sponsors that were interested. So my question is there an additional revenue opportunity that we could choose to pursue? Because that could be another $12,000 to $24,000, just like it was for the stadium.
So
in
the
revenue.
I mean, the agreement in place does allow them to expand because there was no limitations on what they were to do. If they were to expand to the other fields, there could be incremental revenue.
And I guess I'm asking if we should add that into our spreadsheet. Is that a potential budget item? Because it could also expand opportunity for us.
I think we agreed we would just sort of like apprise the board of what that was, and just sort of get a tacit feeling to move forward, because it wasn't a requirement from the board to take a vote on it or anything. But the board hasn't been fully updated on it. So.
And we don't, I mean, again, we were talking the stadium, which has whole different usage patterns versus Upper Oval and Stadium East. So, I mean.
I'm
you're
trying to be
talking-
creative.
I get that, but we're talking about low dollar amounts at this point, so.
Okay, to be fair, every dollar amount I'm mentioning adds up to about $150,000 of additional opportunity within our budget. So I do think that everything is important. That's all I had for that RC.
Thank you. Yes, Katie?
Thanks. I had a question about the five-year uniform. So I appreciate that it's laid out in terms of like when we would incur costs. But two sort of really kind of practical questions. One is, what are the implications of that? You know, is it just that they're not as new and shiny, but they're still functional? You know, is that a reasonable deferment that we can potentially even shift to long-term? And then secondly, and I recognize that some of these questions, some of them might be from Mr. Manfredini, but Rich, to the extent that you can answer any of them. I'm also curious about why a couple of them stood out to be so much more. So for example, football and lacrosse, you know, are like in the $25,000 versus other ones that are, you know, the closest number I think is like 10, and then there's many that are below. I'm guessing some of that has to do with. Okay, so this comes back to like a cut, no cut kind of thing. And the uniform costs though, those are just like clothing, just jersey and pants. It's not protective equipment, or would that encompass all?
I believe it's what jersey, pants, swimwear.
Well, not swimwear.
Yeah, and like a football jersey or a lacrosse jersey costs more than a cross-country shirt or golf shirt too.
Okay. Any more on RC 11? RC 12?
Joanna had the participation fee.
Oh,
request.
yes.
Oh, I thought,
Yeah, take it that.
I figured he got it.
Can you just remind me what you proposed?
Just every time I go over the athletic budget, it's very hard to, I have a lot of issues with how resources are distributed inequitably. But when it comes down to it, we want to do a participation fee. I think it should be $100 and only for athletics, because athletics gets a coach, equipment, transportation, and a uniform. And the clubs get, after 3 years, get a teacher or coach.
Okay, RC 12. RC 13. RC 14. RC 15. Joanna.
So just about the computer equipment, last year's materials, I believe, said that New Canaan leases their computers. Why don't we, or is, you know, what is the advantage or disadvantage of that?
So they say what they really do is they take a personal loan out of the bank to finance the cost of equipment. So you'd be taking out a loan from, let's say, Chase or TD Bank at 6% interest to buy a Chromebook that's $350. It's not a great use of funding resources. You typically wouldn't want to have borrowing costs unless you're talking about something that's a high price point. Districts do it because then in the year that you're paying, while you're paying that lease payment, which you're creating debt that you're pushing down.
Okay, thank you. And then for our display systems, it says $5,000 for an Apple TV and a ViewSonic. I know Apple TVs are like less than $100 usually, or, you know, I can't imagine that they're much more. So these ViewSonics, is this something that every teacher in classroom needs? Is this something that some, you know, teachers would want, but other teachers are fine with just general LED, like large LED screen, or? Is that a Jeff question?
So we're trying to put these just instructionally in all the classrooms. I mean, that's what we're trying to do.
Can you say that again?
Like these ViewSonic boards right behind you here, we're trying to put those in all the classrooms, ideally in all the classrooms.
But in a year where we have budget constraints, is that something that we need to keep doing?
Well, that's
It's a question for us.
we can pause on that if we have to, right?
Okay, thank you. Like, yes, okay.
They are 15 years old, the ones that are set to be, well, 16 years old almost, set to be replaced. So if we pause, you're just having an older device.
And operationally, can you speak to how often it's a problem that they're old?
I would check it. Not be sure to what kind of help desk tickets they have, but a device that's that old.
Greg?
I got a bunch of questions. First, can we put for the ad cut, can we put the Chromebooks for fifth grade on there to not be replaced? And then can we also put on there to eliminate the one-to-one initiative? I'd like to see what the impact of that might be. As far as not just not replacing Chromebooks, but like other software programs that would also no longer be necessary.
So Rick, did you get that?
I'd also like to put on elimination of
Wait,
Zoom.
hold on.
So just so I'm clear, you want to eliminate all Chromebooks for lower grades?
The fifth grade, I don't know which grades, but the fifth grade, the replacements that were in the budget was just for fifth grade. So I think we should look at what it would look like to phase out the one-to-one program.
So you don't want elementary schools to have a one-to-one
A unified device.
Correct,
Or Middlesex?
just for elementary,
So go back to, basically going back to a cart.
correct.
So you'd want to replace fifth grade with more carts?
You wouldn't replace them, you'd save the money, and going forward, you wouldn't have to replace them either.
Yeah, well, that's just, that's just
Yeah,
a
but
state,
they're all-
that's a change in the actual programmatic
basically like
instructional
design
model that we
defined,
have.
But I mean, they would still have them in the building. They just, I mean, they wouldn't have as many, but they'd still be replacing them and using the programs. It just wouldn't be something that the kids took home every day. That's the implication of eliminating one.
And they're the ones that go to
So
sixth
if you
grade.
eliminate the fifth grade, just simply wouldn't have a device. If you eliminate this, because right now the fifth graders would take their Chromebooks to middle school. So if you cut the fifth grade Chromebooks, you just don't have Chromebooks in fifth grade.
Doesn't that mean they wouldn't be able to do their homework? Because I believe all of that right now is digital and it's writing and it's
Fifth
online
grade, yeah.
programs
Not
for
K
fifth graders.
fourth.
Amy, what would be the impact on homework?
There would be an impact on homework, but I think the larger impact would be on the mandated state testing. Students use their Chromebooks for that also.
Historically, we used that for, we used it on a cart. That's what we did before we went one-to-one. So would we still be able to do that?
They just wouldn't have access to the Chromebook for homework. I mean, not all of their homework is on the Chromebook anyway, but the familiarity of using the Chromebook is important to integrate throughout the year.
I have a fifth grader right now, he barely uses his Chromebook ever.
I got a fifth grade, just use it to watch YouTube at home.
Same here.
Small sample size, but.
I'm not using.
I would certainly respect those to disposition, but we're just, we haven't had a really discussion about one-to-one and changing the model just at the table. It just seems.
But we're talking about eliminating a lot of important people. So my suggestion is to
correct.
not eliminate the people, but to eliminate some of these devices that are recurring costs that are going to continue to go up over time.
Understood. Okay.
Oh, and I have more.
Oh,
So
okay.
Zoom, we have Microsoft Teams that we already pay for. I think we should shift to that. So can we put that onto the?
I think it's on
as
the
well?
list. It was part of the answered questions because they said that.
But I don't think it's on the Excel
On the
spreadsheet.
Excel spreadsheet.
Oh,
So can we put that on there?
You want it
And then with respect to the software programs that we have, I know this has been discussed a few times. My concern is that while utilization rates are high, we have not made a clear distinction between which of these software programs relate to our core programs that we really care about versus not core. So I think it'd be great to see what that looks like, to see if there are software programs that are not not as important to us as we might otherwise think.
So my question kind of related to that was that the Learn platform, how does it identify a program to stop using? Is there like a use rate?
It does give us some feedback on usage rates, and that's actually what we did, Mr. Graham, with these other software, the current software packages that we have. We went through it with Learn in terms of, are we using it or are we not using it? We had discussions with curriculum as to, are these important or not? We actually we eliminated a lot of new proposals for software, but we did go through the list. Actually, a couple of times we've gone through that list and used Learn to go through it too.
So I have a question about Seesaw in particular. I understand it's for K-2 because it's more pictorial but if we are not, if kindergarten and first grade and second grade aren't learning from home the majority of the time, why are they on Seesaw in the classroom? Or is it used for some other purpose, some other population? Like if you're focusing on play-based learning, we're trying to get away from screens, why are we continuing to invest in this particular platform that I know was brought in to help manage classrooms during the pandemic?
Right, I agree.
So your question is, why are they using Seesaw? They're not using Seesaw at home. Is that what you're saying?
Well, why are they using it in the classroom?
They're using it when, for example, the teacher might have students go into centers. That might be one center that students engage in for a part of literacy block or part of math block. But they're not using it in place of instruction with text and time with the teacher. It's just it's an alternative means. Students can operate pretty independently on it at the K-2 level.
So my suggestion for thinking about technology would be that if we are interested in having them go back and take another scrub, that we identify a percentage or a number specific to this category. Dave looks like he's saying no, but
Well, I guess, yeah, and again, this is one where it's always a little tricky with policy and budget kind of mix, right? Which is the trouble with that cut. Instead of a number, like for me, like Brain Pop stood out as one, like that's a lot of construction paper for 20 grand. I'd love to see them not be on Brain Pop. And I had a follow-up. I'd love to know, Rich or Amy, the educational difference from a multi-$1,000 ViewSonic versus an LG. What's the educational difference?
we have an answer to that.
With an appreciation for the age. Yeah, I get it. They're old, but like, why do we need to ViewSonics?
I wanted to refer to my friends in the tech department, but the actual tech school.
Rich, do you know?
Do you mean?
They use a ViewSonic for an LG, I would have to check.
Well, versus, I mean, LG's just, I'm just throwing out a cheap, high-end, cheap end. I know these are very high, so, yeah.
We'll follow.
All right, thank you.
Is it, you're talking about an LG just being the screen, David?
So the ViewSonic, like you could tell me that, hey, the resolution's really great and we have learners who are challenged visually, so we need to have this level screen to be able to develop, deliver education to certain learners who are visually challenged. Great, I'm done. If you want to tell me that there's an LG screen that'll pretty much do the same thing, there's no real difference. Okay, then now I'm going to wonder why we're not thinking,
This is the computer sort of built into this process and this screen.
And that may be the answer. I just
So
don't know.
something that I can't speak to, but I would wonder about is like the functionality of, engaging back and forth, but I'd have to look into it and see exactly
And
what
I'm
that
thinking-
offers. One
And if
versus
these are
the
more than
other.
just a screen and there's a computer built in?
Right.
Yes, it's
So
a wee bit more than a screen.
Yeah, that'd be
The
great.
interactive capability. So we'll look and see what both offer.
Thank you.
Robin?
I had a question about the teacher and admin laptop replacement cycle. I know in here, they are saying that they want to replace them every 4 years. And my question is, are they really not working, or could that be extended to be a 5-year? Because I know I have a 4-year-old laptop and it's working just fine. And I just, for the administrators and the teachers specifically, I'm not talking about students or student desktops, because I understand those get a
So-
lot of use every single.
So the laptops aren't high-end laptops that are purchased, and so the ones that are in place now have had a number of issues, battery issues, screen issues, et cetera, which is why they're slated to be replaced.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else in 15? And I need some clarification about what is happening with Brain Pop, Seesaw, anything high level. Are we just asking questions or are you guys putting stuff on the
So it all
table?
seems to be like in RC 15. Seems like there's various different line items. I mean, I can read off my list if other people have lists. I don't, well, we could just send them in, but. I mean, so far I've heard new computer equipment with 5th grade Chromebooks. I've heard, anybody please jump in. Zoom, I think we're talking about laptops extending for teachers, whether it's going to go an extra year from 4 to 5. Brain Pop I threw out there. I don't know if anybody else had anything in RC 15, but.
I was thinking that as looking at Seesaw, I was also still wondering about learning A to Z RAS kids. If we're moving away from level readers, or can we, I know we have them physically already in the classroom. Do we still need to be for that? I mean, I remember my now 11th grader use that program. It seemed kind of outdated. But again, also, these are educational decisions that we shouldn't be making, but you understand why we're raising these questions.
Right. What I was just saying to Shirley is some of our students who receive special education services also use some of the computer software that you're listing. So that would be something that we would want to talk about together.
Can I just make the assumption about Zoom? I'm not trying to just trying to understand, would we be educating our parents now how to use Microsoft Teams to tune into board meetings and stuff or is that a discussion for another day?
I don't think anyone needs to be, I mean, I don't, personally, everyone knows how to use both.
Okay.
No?
I'm just-
There's like 5
Look,
other options.
you know what,
so-
just,
All right, I'll
let's just put it on the cut list for the moment.
I'll defer it, okay.
Yeah,
Tired.
okay.
Jill, can I go back to RC 11? I have a question. It's more of a theoretical question, I think. What constitutes a club and a sport? And if a club, if we have a sport that wants to become a club, can that happen?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, we can have a sport that wants to become a club, like rugby was a club.
Exactly. And squash was probably a club and they all got elevated to sports. Can they move back down if they want?
That's a good question. Yes.
And what would constitute that and how does that mechanism happen?
I would assume, and we can check with Chris, if it's sanctioned by the CIAC.
But those those 4 sports are not. So
Correct.
What if they band together and say, we no longer want to be a sport, we want to be a club?
Okay, so,
So I would imagine for those sports, you probably could.
okay,
But we can check with Chris.
okay, can you check that? And then I actually neglected to ask, to talk about unified, because in some ways that functions a little bit more like a club than it does like a sport. It does receive some limited transportation, I think, and there is a T-shirt, but it's a little bit of a different model than a traditional sport. So
Is it a CAC sport unified?
I don't know. So can you just look at unified specifically when you think about the participation fee, please? It is. All right. Thank you. Okay. Any more else on 11? If not, we're going to 16.
I have questions.
Yes, 16.
I think we used to get the demographer every other year, and then we went to every.
Yeah, we've talked about it off and on. Go ahead, Rich.
So in my time, we've done it every year. I would say it's the report that informs your largest expense within the budget. And so in the years in which, in the past, where you didn't have a demography report, those are years where you had high swings of either you over budgeted for teachers you ended up not filling, or you under budgeted for teachers where you ended up having to find money. You're spending $60 million on teacher salaries, and a report for $11,000 is what's informing you.
Very, thank you.
Okay. Anything else in 16? Greg?
There was a question that I had, and something one of the folks in the public comments asked about the weather service that we use.
Rich?
There's something special about it that we're missing? I mean, I have just free weather. I look at it on my phone all the time.
So actually, if you ever want to see a dysfunctional group of people, the superintendents at 4 o'clock in the morning with the weather guy is the place to be. We do use, I use that particular service because everybody in the state of Connecticut basically uses that service. That's probably a third of that cost. So we collaborate in the morning with the actual meteorologist, with the superintendents, like all in the southern Fairfield County area. The other one, we may be able to do something with, because I personally do not use that one. Beyond him, I use Google and I use weather.com and stuff. I know our facilities department, uses the other service, so.
You'll take a look at that
Yeah,
one.
it's with a Sky gift.
That's the service that the facilities department uses primarily. That gives them information about the roads and information about, ideally when to bring people in, to start shoveling and plowing.
I think there's room in that particular area.
Okay. Well, let's
Just curious.
We'll put it on, and you guys, if you have a suggestion, you can tell us.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, anything else in 16?
Oh, yeah. The catering costs, can you break out what that, like our Board of Ed catering, I'm fine with cutting, like I'm happy to buy everybody sandwiches. But the retirement and the convocation and all that seems, if we're really cutting that in Darien, Connecticut, that's, so what is that price? What's the breakout of what is, for staff versus
Yeah,
us?
so we can do each line item then.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
You want to just break out the Board of Ed stuff, so you don't have to break out all the
Yeah,
rest
it's
of
just,
it?
this is like, what is, the Super Saturday and what we get versus everything else. Yeah.
Well, didn't you say
Okay.
convocation was 6,000? That was already broken out.
So is the rest of it Board of Ed stuff?
So 2,500 is Super Saturday.
Seems like-
2,500, I believe, is the board retreat in July. The $6,000 is convocation. And then you have small amounts for things, whether it's like the legislative breakfast that was here,
Yeah.
negotiations, principal meet and greets, things like that.
So negotiations, remind me, we get,
Pizza.
we get, but for both groups, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't pay for the teachers.
The teachers eat better than you do, so you're.
Oh, come on. All right.
Okay. 17. $18. $19. Joanna?
I don't know if we're still making line item request cuts. Is that okay? So there was part of the Title I contraction. RC 19 absorbed $32,815. That was previously, you said, used for teachers college, the professional development. So I'd like to cut that since we don't do that anymore. And also the convocation speaker. I think Dr. Abby, you can speak very well. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else in 19? Okay. 20? $21? $22? $23?
Okay.
Yeah, 23.
And on 23, I'm interested in the summer school tuition, increasing that 4%, similar to what you had done in other parts.
So then the expense just goes up as well because it's a sharing agreement.
It automatically goes up.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. I
Good
guess
try,
we don't
though.
need to do that.
A for effort.
Okay.
We were business,
I know.
not a business.
24. Joanna?
Just in light of, again, trying to keep people in the building that are working with our kids. I know the intern program is very good for future recruitment and retainment, but I feel like $68,000 for hopefully future employees is just something we can't afford right now. So I'd like to put the 68 down.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
So there's two
The
psychology
the intern
interns.
program.
Can you speak to what that would do? Just for clarity.
Shirley, yes.
Enjoy the psychologist interns over the course last year and this year provide, last year they provided a full-time coverage. We were short one psychologist, one of elementary school, and they provided full-time support, evaluations and coverage. They also fill in a maternity leave. They also covered any missed sessions or several missed sessions they could do for PPTs while other psychologists attend those meetings. And currently that's what they're doing. So we've minimized the number of missed sessions for our students in all across the schools. We've minimized the opportunity for missed sessions when they're attending both 504 and IEP meetings. At the same time, they're also probably very highly qualified. They're doctoral candidates. So they come with a great deal of knowledge and resource that can really support our sometimes younger psychologists that are coming into the field. So I think the value added piece to them is not only pedagogical and not only supporting all of our students, but also coverage of missed sessions, which is something we've made a strong commitment to.
Greg.
Just to follow up on that. So there, I think we spent, there's another question here about the 140,000 that we spent on substitutes related to special ed. I think the answer says that that's special ed paraprofessionals. In bringing the 68,000 on, is that going to reduce the 140K? Because now we don't need this, no?
No, but we don't get substitutes for psychologists.
So in the
You can't
past,
get substitutes
before
for
you had this
psychologists.
program, that 140 was like 152 and 156.
I thought Shirley just said that like some of the role of the psychologist was filling in for people when they're
So
absent.
when our Darien psychologists are attending IEP meetings or 504 meetings, those are missed sessions with students. So they're able to cover those. They also conduct initial evaluations, reevaluations, as well as interim evaluations, which helps also free up psychologists to work in classrooms with students as well. So the value added piece is not only resourceful, but has really helped us stay compliant with what our requirements are.
Anything else in 24?
Just one other clarification. The
Yes.
psychologists that are listed for special ed, those are totally separate from the other psychologists that we have
No,
listed.
psychologists share, they share caseloads, they share.
It's
they-
in both RCs.
They loop with their students, yes.
Okay.
So, but there's two different things, right? So the FTE, actually, the person actually does work with children with needs and children without needs, or students with or without needs. But so that we can track it financially, we do split them out financially, but it's merely a tracking.
So like it says there's 12 FTE psychologists in special ed, and I think there's
Right.
either 15 or 18.
Right.
And the other
Right.
ones.
So if you and I were both psychologists, we might share token school and you cover grades 1 and 3 and I cover grades 2 and 4. But you might show up in the special ed budget and I might show up in the general ed budget just for an accounting purposes.
I guess when we ask the question of like, how many psychologists do we have across all the schools?
Yes.
What is that actual number?
Okay.
That's
Like
what I'm trying to figure
18,
out.
right?
18. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more thing that this year the interns are also helping with ELP screenings, which has really helped not only in terms of efficiencies, but supporting our students.
Robin.
So I just want to clarify, because I thought that the 13 psychologists that are in the special education budget were specifically IEP designated, similar to the special education paras.
No.
So when the second psychologist was added, I guess there was a commitment to reflect them as 50-50 between the elementary schools and special ed. The middle school and high school psychologists are all in special ed.
That was my question. So
So
middle
you-
school and high school.
So they aren't necessarily all for IEPs,
Are
but that is
all
how
for
they are
IEP.
reflected. You certainly could put them all in the schools. The state, when we submit state reporting, requires us to split them 85-15. You could do the 50-50 that you do. I mean, there's no requirement in terms of how you.
Okay. And then just, oops, sorry.
If I may just add, not to what line items that the psychologists are in, but they support students in general education and special education in middle school and high school. They're pre-referral, they're early intervention, they work with families. So they are, I can't speak to the lines that they're in, but they provide support for all our students.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to clarify because I think there might have been some confusion with some of our public and the comments that we've received on the special education paras, which are not the paraprofessionals in the elementary schools that are currently in the cut list. And I think there was some confusion on that based on some of the public emails that we've been getting where people are concerned that children with special needs in elementary and kindergarten and first grade would lose a para, but that's not the case if they have an IEP and have a para assigned to them.
Correct. And I
So-
hope we were helpful in clarifying that last time, Robin, that instructional paras are paras who are in the general education classroom, para educators who are providing support for students with IEPs or any other supports are actually recommended at the PPT, and the duration and the amount, whether it's a one-to-one or a small group, is determined at that time. But they are exclusively mandated.
And the staffing, you're saying that the level that you have staffed at, I'm assuming you have some kind of a caseload requirement and determine the number of students that each of them can service that would get to the 101 paraprofessionals that we have.
I think if I recall last time I explained that some students from K through 12 or pre-K through 12 may have a para throughout the day. Some may just have it a couple periods of the day. Some may have it in a small group in a shared para. Some may be individual. Again, it's determined at the PPT and recommended, and that really determines the number of hours.
Okay, so we're fully staffed based on the current needs of the children that require the services.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on 24? 25. Yes, Robin.
I have a question about the electricity public benefit tax, the $44,000 that was mentioned in the memo, because I understand the town is including that going away in their budget. So I would like to add that to our spreadsheet and propose that we also add that assumption. That would be the $44,000 savings.
What are your thoughts on that? I'm saving it.
So originally they talked about it going away in April. We did reach out to Eversource. That's not happening. They said there's a possibility it could end in, not end, but be reduced in July. So I did speak to Jen, the town administrator, so they're going to make the assumption in their budget for next year that it's going to be reduced. If it's not reduced, then you're going to have to do a transfer and come up with the money because you're going to have to keep your lights on.
So what would be the equivalent reduction if we just?
It'd be the
followed?
44th.
Would be the 40.
We may as well be on the same page as the
Yeah.
town. I've got a logic.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Robin. Anything else in 25? 26? 27? 26?
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm what we have in the list. So there is one line about specifically raising the tuition to the 12.5. Is that right? That's what's on the table? Okay, thank you.
I don't know if that's, sorry, I don't know if that's actually made the list, does it?
It's in the spreadsheet.
So
Oh,
anything-
sorry, yes, it
anything
was.
in
We
the
put
memo
that on.
is
That's
the
okay.
spreadsheet.
Thank you.
27? Security? We don't have 28 anymore, and we talked a little bit about capital. Typically, we'd go to capital at this stage.
There's also questions at the end on all, if we could go through those as well.
Sure. Anything else? I'll come back to that in a second. Anything
Capital.
else on?
I'm sorry, what are we doing with capital?
Typically, if there were any questions at this stage, we would just raise them. But I mean, we've had lots of questions at this point,
Right,
but
so we don't need to put, but if we want to put something on the cut list, can we do
Go
that?
ahead.
Oh, okay. I'd like to put the sidewalk on the cut list.
this one out here.
Yes, I feel the town, I know it's overall the end, the same bucket, but it counts against us. So I think it's a town responsibility.
Okay. Yes, Robin.
I'm just wondering about the Darien High School repaving.
Pushing that out.
Maybe deferring that 1 year, but I don't know how the rest of the board might feel
I'll
about
put it
that.
on and let's have Kevin give us some more formal
Or get
response.
some, a
He
little
spoke
more
to it.
information on that.
He spoke to it, but can you respond formally? Yes, Dave.
I would just split out. I think we saw the drain over Tokenique and the paving together, like I would just split it. See which one's more urgent than the other. Just clarification from Kevin on that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else on capital? Okay. All right, then we have a number of questions left to go through. Greg, do you want to just, or anyone else, do you want to just speak to the questions that you would like to, going in order? So starting at 100.
I just had a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
On that one, it gave us like the total historical spend on these, but it didn't tell us what's in the budget.
Today.
Which one's Greg, sorry?
This is on all the SEL and DEI stuff. It gave us like historical costs, I think, since 2020, but it doesn't say, is there anything in the budget or no?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it asks, it does ask.
I
for
had
the
asked about the
history.
SEL writing. That was it, that I could, the curriculum.
I just didn't know.
Yeah, well, we can
So look at that.
provide that. I mean,
Just follow up.
Yeah, it's fine for a follow-up, just,
Yeah.
I'm interested there.
Question, I interrupt. Please go ahead.
Greg, I think you need to repeat for Amy what you were asking.
I, sorry, couldn't hear you.
The SEL and DEI question number 100, it gives us the spend since 2020, since the inception of those programs, but it doesn't tell us what's included in the current budget.
I'm sorry, there is a nominal amount, a couple $1,000s. I'd have to look at the exact line for SEL for writing what we talked about earlier in the board meeting, for morning meeting, to continue with that K-5 and for some of the work at the middle school level and flex.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
really-
just whatever.
That's really,
I just wasn't sure if, because it didn't address that part of the question.
that's laid out in our C-19
Okay.
and labeled, yeah.
And then there's a related question, number 103, that talks a little bit about this idea of this flex period. This is sort of separate from the budget, but like my daughter is in 7th grade. She's talking to me about this flex period being dedicated towards SEL, where they go and they watch a video in an auditorium, which I think is actually acting the exact opposite way of the intention, which is to deal with social emotional learning. It's creating actual anxiety amongst some of the kids because now there's a teacher that they aren't able to meet in that period, where otherwise in the other flex periods, they are to get their homework done and be actually productive. So I would just rethink that concept altogether.
and you're saying that I just caught the bit going into the auditorium for.
They go into an auditorium and they watch a video for the flex period rather than being able to go visit with their teachers, get caught up on their work, homework, studying, or otherwise.
So one of the things that we'll look at when we take a look at the curriculum writing for that flex period is on balance, right? You want to work with children, especially at the middle school level, to think about executive functioning skills, time management. That's incredibly important in their middle school years as they're transitioning from elementary to the high school. But I can understand what you're saying. Also, we want to have children be able to use that time planfully and meaningfully to kind of support on balance what they're doing with their academics, athletics, all their extracurriculars.
Then maybe make it optional.
Or something that's intentional, right? There's a way to teach time management, for example, with some of the things that you're talking about. So that's something that Mrs. Demoulas and I will work on together, school counselors.
Thank you.
Joanna.
So going off of flex, it would be, and I don't know if we've already talked about this. Flex comes up a lot. I know some days are for going to other teachers or your voice, your music lessons or camerata or whatever, and some days are for lessons. It'd be nice if we could just get an overview of where it came from and what it's meant to do. My question specifically is for the DBT. Did that cost stop once Dr. Dad came on staff and she is now doing it, or is that an ongoing cost?
We originally contracted with CBC, and that's where Dr. Dad formerly was employed. So when she came in, yes, we ended that. We still have when they're brought in for certain things, CBC is not working with us, or that it ended.
Thank you. I'm sorry, now it's getting late.
What was this?
Dave.
Yeah, 2 points of follow-up. Flex, I've heard a lot of the same feedback that was mentioned earlier. Would love to understand not only what could be done maybe a little more efficient, reduce anxiety and effect, and perhaps maybe there's cost savings there. Also in the line 100, it mentions second elementary psychologist, 2.2 million. Not sure what the breakdown is of that 2.2, how much of the time that actually represents and how much is dedicated to the SEL or DEI. Just trying to understand the basis for that number.
So it's just the cost of the psychologist.
Yeah.
It's not like the fractional. So it's the cost over the number of years, 6 years or so.
And so as presented, the question would be, does that mean that the second elementary psychologist spends all their time dealing with DEI or SEL, which I don't think is the answer. So if we get some clarification on that.
If I may ask, just if you can repeat that, David, just, I think the question is.
What are the
percentage
psychologists
of the
doing?
time are psychologists spending on DEI?
So we have, it says second elementary psychologist, 2.2 million. But that response is in a request to how much time we spent on SEL and DEI. So as drafted, you would read that and say our second psychologist spends all their time in SEL and DEI. If we could just get more facts to actually clear this up.
Okay, and they don't, we spoke about it, so we will give you that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about this block of questions? Okay.
Jill, I have a question on the process going forward now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's something one from public comment, which is sticking in my head of that. Someone was mentioning they need to pressure the Board of Finance. So when we come up with a number in 2 weeks and put that to the Board of Finance,
Yes.
what is the Board of Finance's obligation from that point? Can they increase that number?
No, we need to put, well, yes, but we need to put forward the number that we think is the right number. We don't, the right thing to do is to go to them with the number that we believe is what we need for the school to function, rather than,
But I think the dilemma we're painted with is we're gonna be, if we go with a number that we believe is the right number, then we may end up where we were last year and have to
that's correct.
re-engineer the whole budget over the course of the next 3 months and not work on the proper way of running a school system for those 3 months and then try to consolidate what takes 6 months in 3 months. And if we go with a low number, then to the lady's points, we're cutting off our nose to and reducing our school program to where it's almost non-functional in some instances. And it's late and I'm really tired, but the point is, there has to be a way where we can thread this needle somehow and present something to the Board of Finance that is acceptable and have this ability to then prove or disprove or change the number to where we need to be a school system.
At the end of the day, it's our obligation to go forward with the budget that we think is the appropriate level of spend. So that is what we're trying to get to. In terms of the risk assessment, the appropriate thing to do is to go with the number that we think is the number to spend.
Okay.
Can I make a comment as well?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, just then I think Dennis, exactly to your point, this is the reason, and to Robin's earlier point in the evening, this is why we are attempting to turn over every rock, every stone to find the pennies, which I know John thinks it's painful. But then we can take that to the Board of Finance and say, we've done our job. We have attempted to find every penny. And then we can present something to them. It has to be defensible. And I'm just like you, I do not think that it is a good idea at all to extend this another 3 months, because that means that we're spending 3/4 of our year on the budget instead of doing what we're supposed to be doing.
So
I was gonna say, just, it has to be defensible and we have to defend it.
Go ahead, John.
So we did an unprecedented amount of pre-budget work so that the Board of Finance was aware of what our budget was looking like going into. And I don't believe turning rocks is painful. I just think we're avoiding some of the bigger decisions by turning over rocks. So we will accumulate all the little pennies and rub them together, but there's still, especially that we rejected the idea restructuring, we have a big hole to fill. And that's why I kind of kid when we talk about 1,000, 2,000. I think it's great. I think it's great everybody's looking for this. But to Dennis's point and your point, last year's budget was indefensible when we filled FTEs that were not going to be implemented in the schools. And the Board of Finance is watching every one of our meetings. I think they're very aware of the and talk to them. I mean, call them, pick up the phone. They're very aware of the challenges we face. So like I said earlier, I think there's a great way that we can coalesce around some major items to get it, you know, off the whatever 6% number that we're trending towards. And then we'll figure out where a majority of us fall.
I will go back and say that if 6% is the number that the 9 of us feel is, or the majority of the 9 of us feel is what we need to fund our schools at the level that our constituents expect, then that's the number. And that is our job. That is our duty to our town. It's not to kowtow to any other body.
I don't think, I understand that, but I also want to be careful. I think starting with the guidance and looking at the implications of trying to meet that number is pretty important. Because if we just started at 6% and didn't go through the exercise of trying to figure out what it looks like to come within range of the guidance, then it's much, again, we would get to a point where it's.
And we're doing our due diligence.
That's right.
And if on the 11th, we decide that 6% is the number, then that's what it is. But we've done our due diligence, to Greg's point.
Okay. Yes, Robin.
And just one extra point. I mean, I think we also have more work to do after the budget process on a longer term
Yes.
outlook, next steps, maybe longer term investments that we should be making and thinking about, because we know the costs are going to continue to rise over the next few years. And this is also what all the legislators and other Fairfield County superintendents were talking about, because they face the same challenges. So we, over a longer term perspective, and I know we're going to be talking about it more this spring, and you know, the various projects that we want to look into, but those are equally important, if not more so that we don't continue to have this kind of discussion going forward. If we can do things more in-house potentially, that would allow us to decrease more expensive contracted or outplaced kind of services. And we need to do a better job about thinking about all of that holistically. And that's not something we'll accomplish in this budget process.
Okay. All right. With that, I will thank you all for the time this evening. We have follow-up action items, which we're all excited to look at right now. Board member handbook, we're going to look at in March. Katie and I have talked about that. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think the Oxbridge use of building against enrollment analysis is coming up in facilities next, and then sustainable cafeterias will be later in the year. Anything else? Okay. Public comment.
Good evening. If anybody in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and address for the record, and note that you will have up to 3 minutes to comment.
Barry Palmer, DEA president. First, I'd like to address a couple times I've heard last year's budget that went to the Board of Finance was indefensible. I've been fielding emails and concerns from staff members all year due to the fallout of the Board of Finance mandated cuts to last year's budget. The budget you passed the first time around was defensible. You chose not to defend it. You chose not to speak with one voice as a board. What you've done tonight has done more to damage morale in this district than I mean, if I could send you the comments that your staff has been sending about what we witnessed tonight, I think you'd all be ashamed of yourselves.
Please do.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, Nicole Blackman, 12 Red Cedar. I'm gonna echo some things that we've heard tonight, but I figured I need to get it out there. I'm here tonight as a parent, a resident, and a strong supporter of our school system. Like many others in this room, we chose to move to Darien for the exceptional educational opportunities it provides. My son experienced firsthand the remarkable benefits of the paraprofessionals every single day. He's been in the ELP program for 2 years and really seen him transform into a totally different kid, to be honest. He will be joining some friends at Hindley next year as he starts kindergarten. And I'm excited to see what lies ahead of him. Last week, after I came to the meeting, I felt compelled to kind of see what my peers and my community are also feeling. In a matter of days, I was able to gather 828 people to sign a petition, which I have sent to most of you and hopefully you've received. I also have all those signatures here today. I am urging the board to reconsider the proposal to replace these dedicated professionals with 10 college interns. It was suggested last week that there is a substitute problem and the paraeducators are not being utilized in their intended roles. The need for substitute teachers is an important but different issue. That should be addressed separately. Interns, while valuable, cannot replicate the depth of experience and dedication or the strong connections that our current paraeducators bring to the classroom. Their roles are indispensable, and their impact on the success of our students cannot be overstated. If we continue to overlook the needs of those who directly influence our students' growth, we risk eroding the very qualities that make Darien schools so special. We can't afford to lose sight of that. I respectfully ask the board to revisit the budget and consider making cuts to less essential items, what some may consider the nice-to-haves, in order to preserve the 15 instructional paraeducator positions for the 25-26 budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Lane, 16 Hillcrest Avenue, and I'm here to discuss particularly the Wellness Center. I appreciate your thought, Robin, on parents staffing it. I have two problems with it. One of which is, as the DHSPA co-chair, I can tell you we have a hard time getting parents to volunteer for lots of things. They might volunteer for the College and Career Center because that's sort of a separate thing that's kind of special. I don't know that they're going to volunteer to spend a lot of time in the Wellness Center with a bunch of teenagers. And I can assure you that the bunch of teenagers is not going to go to the Wellness Center if it is staffed by parents. So it would ruin it. And I'm in the school enough that I've seen the work that's going on in there. It has become very popular. I would hate to see that go just because we can't have data on something that's intended to be preventative. Obviously, we can't have data because we can't run a control of not having the Wellness Center. So that's it. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay, I'll take a